Chapter 654. Everyone's gazes shifted from the corpse to Qin Qing with difficulty. This sword strike was clean and efficient, without any hesitation. It was so domineering. The whole place was silent. This sword strike not only killed Qiu Xian, but also shocked everyone present who doubted Qianqing School and even mocked Qianqing School. Who dared to say that Qianqing School had no talent among the new generation? Then let's try Qianqing School's methods. This level of instant kill was too strong a visual impact. This was not a low-level opponent against a high-level opponent, but more like an attack by an immortal king. How did he do it? How did he do it? As an immortal king, Hua Luiying found it hard to imagine. Even if the sword technique of the Dragon King Palace was at the true level, it was not so easily broken. Moreover, the sword technique was broken before it was completed. It was as if he knew what sword technique the opponent was going to use. Hua Luiying's wine cup was suspended in mid-air and she didn't put it down for a long time. This also proved the extent of her shock. As a high and mighty celestial king, seeing a fledgling brat do something that even she couldn't do, of course she would be shocked, and quite shocked at that. Of course, it would be easy for Hua Luiying to kill Qiu Xian with one sword strike. However, that was relying on the advantage of overwhelming strength and not breaking the opponent's sword technique in an instant. She knew that she could not complete a one-hit kill when she was at a disadvantage. This sword strike was a truly stunning one. Only then did this sword strike reveal unparalleled talent. This sword strike was a so-called genius sword strike. People often said that geniuses were geniuses. If one did not understand before, then after seeing this, one would truly understand the meaning of the word genius. Everyone's gaze changed when they looked at Qin Qing. Hua Luiying, Lu Li, and even Qin Qing, who knew that it was Jiang Xiu who made the move, all changed their gazes. It was incomparably stunning and, at the same time, incomparably regretful. Is there anyone else who says that Qianqing School has no talent? Dong Wu's pupils contracted. He lowered his head and did not dare to make a sound. He was too domineering. He killed him directly. Qiu Xian was not the only one from the Dragon King Palace. Although the Dragon King Palace was infuriated to see that Qiu Xian was the one who provoked the Dragon King Palace, the Dragon King Palace was killed because he was not as skillful as the Dragon King Palace. The Dragon King Palace could only blame Qiu Xian for the Dragon King Palace's death. Although the new generation of Qianqing School was a little quiet, the old guys in the sect were each more terrifying than the other. The strength and prestige of the Dragon King Palace were a little inferior, so they could only pinch their noses and swallow this bitter result. The Peak Lord of the Rockfall Peak, Su Qingquan, was also in disbelief as he stared at Qin Qing who was walking back. He was also dumbfounded. Qin Qing's aptitude could be considered outstanding in the immortal martial continent, but when placed in the immortal martial continent, where geniuses gathered, she could only be considered average. Even in the Qianqing School, she was still considered average. But that sword strike of hers was simply too stunning. Su Qingquan couldn't help but wonder if the previous Qin Qing had intentionally concealed her strength. Good, wonderful. Qianqing School is still full of geniuses after Jiang Luoxia. Hua Luiying was a woman who didn't like having her limelight stolen from her, especially when the other party was a woman. Today, the banquet is wonderful, and the weather is beautiful. Everyone, let's drink together. Thank you, Sect Master. Someone at the banquet said, "It seems like the weather today is a little strange. Previously, on my way here, I even heard a strange sound of thunder, but it wasn't dark clouds or thunder." Hua Luiying's hand stiffened, and her expression changed. Someone at the side continued, "You still don't know? Tomorrow will be the gathering of the 100 underworlds." What's the gathering of the 100 underworlds? Haven't you heard? The gathering of the 100 underworlds and the alignment of the 7 stars is a kind of strange celestial phenomenon. There must be a demon in the sky. Maybe something will happen in these 2 days. Lu Li glanced at her master and saw a smile on Hua Luiying's face. Even an ordinary person could see that a celestial phenomenon was coming, so Zhai Xing Lu's prophecy couldn't be wrong. But the common people only knew about celestial phenomena, but how could they know where the cause and effect was? The gathering of the 100 underworlds and the alignment of the 7 stars was just the beginning. There were even more powerful celestial phenomena. Of course, these common people didn't know. Not only these people, but she was the only one in the immortal martial continent who knew. This was a sentence she saw in the ancient ruins. Others didn't care about it, but she keenly captured this sentence as an opportunity for her to become an immortal emperor. The gathering of the 100 underworlds, the alignment of the 7 stars, the opening of the eyes of the firmament, the emergence of the blue spirit. For this sentence, Hua Luiying looked through many ancient books. When strange beasts first appeared, they needed a long period of hibernation to slowly recover their vitality. In other words, they were very weak, so weak that she, an immortal king, could succeed. Everything would depend on tomorrow. That would be a big day, a day that would be recorded in the annals of the immortal martial continent. She desperately hoped that tomorrow would come sooner. After 3 rounds of wine, everyone drank to their heart's content. Of course, everything was centered around Hua Luiying, listening to her preach and listening to her reminisce about the past. When night fell and the full moon hung high in the sky, the banquet finally ended. That night, a celestial phenomenon appeared in the sky. In the pitch-black night sky, the stars suddenly shone with a fiery red light. It felt as if the sky was leaking and flames from beyond the sky were burning in. Hua Luiying sensed the red light outside and was startled awake from his meditation. He quickly walked over and looked outside. The strange phenomenon of the burning sky had already disappeared, but the stars in the sky were exceptionally bright. Is the alignment of the 7 stars coming? Lioli heard the commotion outside and walked in. Master, did something happen? Hua Luiying was a little excited. Your disciple is here. After so many years, she had never called Lioli so intimately like today. Lioli couldn't imagine that the person in front of her was a perverted murderer who was jealous of the virtuous and the capable. Look at the stars outside. Lioli followed her out of the hall. It was late at night and the winds were strong, causing the curtains of the palace to flutter. The distant mountains were very quiet and the sky was unusually bright. That is, Hua Luiying pointed to the sky and said, it's the alignment of the 7 stars. Lioli immediately bowed and said, Congratulations, Master. Ha ha, ha ha ha. Hua Luiying laughed heartily in a carefree mood. Her laughter didn't sound pleasant to Lioli's ears in the deep night. Instead, it sounded exceptionally ferocious, like the cry of an owl. A trace of fear flashed across her lowered eyes. Tomorrow. Once the firmament opens tomorrow, you will activate the array. Lioli said, Your disciple understands. It's late. Go and rest. Recuperate and deal with tomorrow's big event. Lioli bowed and retreated. Hua Luiying slowly retracted her gaze and turned her head to look at Lioli's departing figure. Her eyes no longer had a beautiful feeling. Her pupils contracted like a dormant ferocious beast. Her eyes were deep in thought. Lioli could also feel the terrifying gaze behind her. It was like being stared at by a wild beast. She couldn't help but quicken her steps and leave. That night, the starry sky was especially bright, especially the 7 stars. They formed a strange circle shape and illuminated the land. In the Xianwu continent, strange astronomical phenomena were not rare. Furthermore, the alignment of the 7 stars here might not be the same in the Tianqing school. Even if many people saw it, they wouldn't care. It was just a strange astronomical phenomenon. Therefore, nothing special happened that night. However, they were still wrong. After the 7-star alignment, the dark clouds in the sky surged especially fiercely. When dawn broke the next day, the sky seemed to be shaking to different degrees. Moreover, the rumbling sound was not something that couldn't be heard far away in the sky, but rather, it felt like it was rolling over. Jiang Xiu believed that with Hua Luiying's eyesight, she should be able to see that a large area of obvious black cracks had appeared in the sky. Furthermore, these cracks seemed to be expanding continuously. Rumble, rumble. The shaking above the firmament became even more intense. Many people ran out of their houses. They felt as if the sky was about to collapse. Rumble, rumble. Lioli rushed over in a hurry. Hua Luiying's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. The firmament was about to open its eyes. Once the firmament opened its eyes, then the 700-plus verdant spirit beast that she had been longing for would appear in the world. Meanwhile, on the distant mountain, Mr. Ink Monk and his disciples were also shocked. "What's going on in the sky? Quickly go and check." Chapter 655. The Sky Has Opened Its Eyes. Mr. Moku's eyesight was also extremely shocking. When he saw the situation in the sky, his face changed greatly. The sky opening its eyes was recorded in ancient books as being accompanied by disasters, and they were all major disasters. The so-called sky opening its eyes was a hole in the sky. Naturally, there wouldn't be a hole in the sky for no reason, but it was caused by the astronomical phenomenon in front of it. 100 underworlds gather, 7 stars align, the sky has opened its eyes. Everything from yesterday to today had happened too quickly. Mr. Moku of Green Spirit Mountain frowned. How did the astronomical phenomenon develop so quickly? The momentum is so shocking all of a sudden. The sky is about to collapse, and it's still above my Green Spirit Mountain. It really is unexpected. The disciple holding the brush said, "Master, what should we do?" The sky opening its eyes was only recorded in ancient books, but no one had seen it in reality. But one could imagine how terrifying it was. A hole in the sky, ah. The effects of spatial instability were very frightening. Of course, the immortal cultivators were clear in their hearts. Should we stop the competition for the Green Spirit ranking this time? Mr. Moku looked at the disciple holding the brush and remained silent. Since the establishment of the Green Spirit ranking, there had never been a history of stopping halfway. Once this was opened, the prestige would fall. Natural disasters were nothing to immortal cultivators. The ones who were truly affected were the mortals. They couldn't bear it. No, the Green Spirit ranking cannot be stopped. After muttering to himself for a while, Mr. Moku said, "Use the authority for one more question. Ask the Consonance Pavilion what the consequences of the sky opening its eyes will be." Quickly, quickly. The disciple holding the competition hurriedly responded and left in a hurry. Rumble, rumble. The movement in the sky became louder and louder. Even the cracks that required extremely strong eyesight could be seen just by looking up. It could be seen how big the cracks were. If one got closer, it might already be tens or even hundreds of meters. Rip. Chi-chi. Strange and frightening black electricity flashed out from the cracks. At first, it was very small, but not long after, it formed a large piece between the cracks. Looking from afar, it looked like a region of black electromagnetism. The electromagnetism cloud hung in the sky, as if it would fall at any time. It was very frightening. The sky opening its eyes. The sky opening its eyes. Hua Luiying saw the scene in the sky and trembled with excitement. She had waited for this moment for more than 700 years. How could she not be excited? Quick, activate the array. Lu Li won and immediately passed down the order to isolate Green Spirit Mountain. The heavens have opened its eyes, and Qing Ling has appeared. Green Spirit Beast, I've been waiting for you for so long. Lu Li, on the other hand, was silent. She just looked at the sky in shock. Although the electromagnetism was in the sky, the sound was so loud that it seemed to be right next to her ears. Judging from the height, this electromagnetic cloud covered over 100 miles. Once it fell. What's that? Suddenly, Hua Luiying's expression changed. What? Lu Li couldn't see the black electromagnetic cloud at all. Inside, there seems to be... Hua Luiying didn't continue speaking. The expression on her face was nervous and agitated. Liu Li noticed that the pores on her neck had opened up and her hair was standing on end. What did she see? Everyone was alarmed by the natural phenomenon, except for one person. That person was Jiang Xiu. He was sitting behind the long table, quietly drinking tea, as if everything that was happening outside had nothing to do with him. Junior brother Jiang. Qin Qing ran out in a hurry and rushed in without even knocking on the door. Junior brother Jiang, something big has happened. After yesterday, Qin Qing's opinion of Jiang Xiu had changed. This person was really too demonic. She even felt that Jiang Xiu would definitely achieve great things in the future, even if his natal artifact was broken. The commotion outside was so big, but Jiang Xiu was still leisurely drinking tea. What's wrong? Qin Qing said excitedly. There's a strange phenomenon in the sky, and the situation is a bit serious. Qingling Mountain asked the Lingxi Pavilion and got a sentence. 100 underworlds gather, 7 stars align, the heavens open its eyes, and Qingling has appeared. Jiang Xiu said, and then? Qin Qing widened her eyes and said, haven't you heard of the green spirit beast? No matter if you get the green spirit beast or its power, you can soar to the sky. Right now, almost everyone is rushing towards the heavens. Didn't your natal artifact break? Maybe this is your chance. Jiang Xiu said, everyone is rushing over. Qin Qing said, those who heard the news are all rushing over. Peak Master Qing Quan is also rushing over. Judging by the visual, it should be the generation of Qingling Mountains by Ling Valley. We should hurry. She called Jiang Xiu because she wanted to bring him along. However, Jiang Xiu shook his head and said, I have no cultivation. Now that so many people are fighting over it, if I go, it won't be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. What if I can't get the green spirit beast and lose my life instead? Qin Qing was stunned. She hadn't thought about this problem, but she quickly said, I can protect you. Plus, with your eyesight you should be able to protect yourself. Jiang Xiu shook his head. It's very dangerous. Qin Qing also understood that fighting for the treasure was actually a massacre. Jiang Xiu's chances of getting it were very low. Moreover, there were so many elders present, especially Hua Luiying, who was also at Qingling Mountain. She frowned and said, it's very dangerous, but this is a rare opportunity. If you're lucky. She believed that since the heavens gave Jiang Xiu such an outstanding talent, he shouldn't be buried. Let's go take a look. If it's dangerous, we won't participate. Seeing her sincerity, Jiang Xiu nodded. Immediately, the two of them rushed towards Bailing Valley. The electromagnetic field in the heavens became thicker and stronger, as if a huge hole had been electrocuted in the sky. Rumble, rumble, chi-chi. In the distance, they saw countless streaks of light rushing towards the ancient times. Everyone controlled their altitude. Even space couldn't withstand the magnetic field in the heavens, so no one dared to get close. Even immortal King Hua Luiying didn't have the guts. In the valley, the massacre had already begun. When Jiang Xiu and Qin Qing flew past, they saw a person being burned to ashes by a Hua Tu flame in an instant, leaving only a pair of shoes emitting a burnt smell. In the distance, a person was caught in the midst of fleeing, and his head was chopped off by a flying sword. They hadn't even reached Bailing Valley, but what they saw was already hell. Hurry up, it's a mess, Qin Qing said, and her speed suddenly increased. Disciples of Qianqing School, who dares to stop us? Many of them were disciples of sections. They stayed behind to block the people coming from behind for their senior brothers, as well as to block some of the competitors for their senior brothers. Once they heard that they were from Qianqing School, those people all fled in a flash. The deterrence of a large sect was still very strong. This wasn't cultivated in a day or two. More importantly, the disciples of Qianqing School were very strong. At most, they could only fill the gaps between the opponent's teeth. They couldn't be of any real use at all. Humph! Qin Qing unceremoniously slashed forward with her sword. A crescent-shaped blade pushed forward, and everything in front of her was cut open. She and Jiang Xiu's figures rushed along the path of the blade. They rushed out of the dense crowd and flew into the distance. Jiang Xiu and Qin Qing rushed to Bailing Valley, but Hua Luiying and Lu Li were much earlier than them. No one dared to approach within a few miles of Hua Luiying, but even so, her face was still so cold that it was frightening. 100 underworlds converged, 7 stars aligned, the firmament opened, and Qingling appeared. She thought that she was the only one who knew this sentence, but she didn't expect that a question from Lingxi Pavilion would make it known to everyone in the world. Although she wasn't afraid of attracting so many people to fight over Qing Ling, she was irritated. In addition, she was also worried that there would be unforeseen events. Stop them. Kill anyone who dares to come close. Hua Zijian, led by Lu Li, responded loudly. Master. With a scream, they saw that the electric porcelain in the sky had finally fallen from above. It was a huge electromagnetic field that covered 100 miles. It was pitch black inside, and there were electric arcs outside. Even space couldn't withstand the power. Retreat quickly. Hua Luiying looked up, and her expression suddenly changed. Look, there's an egg falling from inside. It's a green beast egg. This time, the entire mountain range was in an uproar. Everyone was shocked as if they were possessed. They looked at the beast egg that was emitting a strange soft light as it fell from the sky. Inside was the ancient beast, Qing Ling beast. Hua Luiying was also stunned. At this moment, his heart started thumping wildly. It's finally here. Chapter 656. The verdant spirit beast's egg is falling. Someone shouted excitedly. The verdant spirit beast's egg emitted a light that was unusually soft and mysterious. However, it was falling at an alarming speed like a meteorite. People were worried that the egg would not be able to withstand it and explode. However, the verdant spirit beast's egg seemed to be extremely hard. Even a meteorite could not withstand it. However, the egg was not affected at all. Moreover, there seemed to be some runes shining on the egg. The shocking speed of the fall caused the sky to shake. There was also a terrifying electromagnetic cloud in the sky. It was extremely shocking. It was as if a demon had been born. It's really Bailing Valley. The direction in which the egg fell was as they had expected. However, no one rushed over because the electromagnetic cloud in the sky had also fallen. Even space could not withstand the opening of the eyes of the heavens. It was definitely not something that any living thing could withstand. Even the immortal king, Hua Ying, could not withstand it. She had to escape. Everyone escaped from the area where the electromagnetic cloud fell. The terrifying electromagnetic cloud that covered hundreds of miles fell from the sky. The dust in the air was electrocuted into powder. As the electromagnetic cloud fell, the sky and earth became dark as if the end of the world had arrived. Qin Qing and Zhang Xiu were not among them. They stopped in the distance and looked at the terrifying electromagnetic cloud. The electromagnetic cloud was very thick. No one knew how terrifying the power contained in it was. However, when it fell, there was a continuous surge of black power. It was extremely heavy and weighed more than 10,000 pounds. The sky is falling. At this moment, it really felt as if the sky was falling. Darkness descended. Amidst the rumbling, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in. It was pressing towards Bailing Valley. Hua Luiying had already appeared outside the electromagnetic cloud. The wind was howling and the sky was filled with black smoke. She stood on the cliff with a nervous and cold gaze. When the electromagnetic cloud landed, she would snatch the egg. Whoever dared to snatch it from her would be killed without mercy. How terrifying! On the side, Lu Li and the others were extremely shocked. They had never seen such a celestial phenomenon. Disciples, listen to my orders. When the electromagnetic cloud lands, kill anyone who goes near Bailing Valley. Yes. Zhang Xiu looked at everything in front of him. His face was still indifferent and expressionless. Beside him, Qin Qing said, when the electromagnetic cloud lands, not a single blade of grass will grow in Bailing Valley. Just one green spirit beast egg. True powerhouses, such as plants, were all incomparably tyrannical. For example, within a few meters of truffle, not a single blade of grass grew. It absorbed all of the nutrients, to the point that no other plants could survive. This beast egg had just appeared, yet it already had such destructive power. Junior brother, what do you think? Should we snatch it? Zhang Xiu shook his head. Qin Qing was anxious for Zhang Xiu. This was his best chance. Rather than being a piece of trash, why not take a gamble? If he succeeded, his achievements would be limitless. Are we giving up just like that? He could no longer see anything in front of him. All he could see was the black wind, and his ears were filled with the howling of the wind. Boom! When the electromagnetic cloud landed on the ground, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. It violently crashed into the ground, causing the entire earth to shake. Although it couldn't be seen, one could imagine the devastation that the ground had to endure at this moment. He landed. Even people in the air could feel the vibrations. Chee-chee, chee-chee-chee-chee. Boom! The huge air pressure, along with the electromagnetic cloud, rushed in all directions. Even though they were hundreds of miles apart, Jiang Xiu could feel a powerful airflow rushing towards him. Qin Qing reached out and grabbed him. Go, hurry up and snatch it. After the airflow rushed over, countless conveyance lights had already rushed towards Bailing Valley. The conveyance lights were like schools of fish at the bottom of the sea that saw fish food falling into the water. They threw it over, extremely magnificent and dazzling. Hua Zijian, Overlord Hua, has ordered that those who enter Bailing Valley will be killed without mercy. Hua Zijian's disciples rushed out from the side. You can become an immortal emperor if you get the green spirit beast. There's no need to be afraid of Hua Luiying at all. In the face of such a huge temptation, Hua Luiying's name couldn't scare them. Even if Zhang Luoxia was standing in Bailing Valley at this moment, they would never be scared. They had already gone crazy. The two forces immediately strangled each other. For a moment, sword light crisscrossed the sky. Blood splattered everywhere. Screams, angry roars, and bitter coldness resounded throughout the world. Corpses fell from the sky one after another. It was tragic, incomparably tragic. Jiang Xiu's eyes were indifferent as he watched all this from afar. He didn't seem to be in a hurry to snatch the beast elixir at all. On the side, Qin Qing was already a little impatient. She looked at Jiang Xiu and saw that he was still indifferent. She wondered if he had really given up like this. The killing continued. Fresh lives were harvested like weeds. Hua Zijian's disciples were very strong, but in the face of thousands of people, they could only kill one by one. They had already sacrificed a lot of people. If this continued, they would be killed sooner or later. After more than half an hour, the dense light spots in the sky had now become sparse. The number of people who had died was probably as high as 100,000, or even more. Go! The crowd rushed over. Hua Zijian couldn't stop everyone outside. By the time they arrived at Bailing Valley, many seniors and elders from other sects had already arrived. However, they were all blocked outside the valley. Junior brother Jiang, this way. Qin Qing pulled him and followed a part of the crowd, rushing towards Bailing Valley in the distance. What's going on? Hua Luiying stood at the cliff with a group of disciples behind her. They blocked the entrance of the valley. The power of an immortal king was completely displayed at this moment. Who doesn't want to die? Enter the valley and try. On the ground at the entrance of the valley, there was a pile of corpses and a pool of blood. The crowd at the entrance of the valley glared at her with angry eyes. Qin Qing made a strange sound. She looked around curiously. There were no traces of electromagnetic burns on the ground. The surrounding trees were still green and lush. The ground didn't seem to have suffered much damage. Where is the green spirit beast's beast egg? Where did it fall? Jiang Xiu didn't answer. No one should be able to answer this question now. He looked into the distance. Lu Li, who was behind Hua Luiying, saw Jiang Xiu's strange and nervous expression. Sect Master Hua, you're too overbearing. There are many great celestial immortals here. Do you think we can't deal with you if we swarm you? An elder in white said. That's right. There are so many of us. We can crush you to death. The green spirit beast is so huge. You're too greedy to want to monopolize it. Hua Luiying's expression was cold. She looked at this group of people indifferently. I want to monopolize it. You want to share it with me? Are you qualified? Not only was there a difference in status, but there was also a difference in strength. The difference between an immortal king and a great celestial immortal couldn't be made up with numbers. In Hua Luiying's eyes, there was no difference between a great celestial immortal and an ordinary celestial immortal. It was all a matter of one technique. If you're not convinced, you can try. Although everyone present was furious, the hunter would shoot the bird that stuck its head out. Whoever stuck their head out would be the first to die. In the face of great pressure, no one was so stupid. In the end, they all looked at each other. Go and look for the beast egg. Yes. The group of disciples answered and immediately prepared to leave. Of course, Lu Li also planned to look for it. However, Hua Luiying glanced at her and suddenly said, "Lu Li, you stay." Lu Li was stunned but quickly said, "Yes, honored master." However, a strange feeling welled up in her heart. All the senior and junior sisters had gone to look for it. Why was she the only one left behind? It seemed that honored master was beginning to distrust her. She looked towards Zhang Xiu. Zhang Xiu was still calm and collected. It didn't take long before a shout came from afar. "Found it, master, found it. The beast egg must have smashed a big hole when it fell." Hearing this, everyone's hearts were as one. The ancient beast, green spirit beast, had been found. What made them even more excited was that it was a beast egg. They could absorb the energy inside without any qualms. In addition, they could raise it as their natal pet. One could imagine how terrifying its power would be once the green spirit beast grew up. "Honored master, come quickly." Hua Luiying's eyes glowed with a fiery light. His entire person transformed into a ray of light and shot into the distance. In the next second, he appeared beside that disciple and saw a beast that was emitting a soft light like a rock lying limply on the grass. Chapter 657. Once they heard that the egg of the verdant spirit beast had been found, they couldn't hold back anymore. The huge temptation made them lose their rationality. If they took a gamble, the rewards would be too shocking. They couldn't care about anything else and flew towards the egg of the verdant spirit beast, afraid that it would really fall into Hua Luiying's hands if they were late. "Everyone, don't hold back. Swarm forward. Once Hua Luiying dies, we'll split the egg of the verdant spirit beast equally." Anyone with a brain would know how this could happen. However, countless times in history had proven that people would often be blinded by benefits at this moment. The peak master of Luo Yen Peak, Su Qingquan, was among them. 3 elements to nature. Wind destruction. 9 in extreme evil. All kinds of powerful spells and sword techniques blasted towards Hua Luiying from all directions like a bombardment of cannons. There were more than 10 great celestial immortals in this crowd. Although the power of a great celestial immortal's attack couldn't be compared to the power of a celestial king, which was as fine as a nuclear weapon, the lethality was incomparably terrifying. It was enough to raise Hua Luiying to the ground. Noisy. Hua Luiying's gaze swept lightly. Her tall and slender figure slowly turned around. At the same time, she flung her sleeves, and a wave of air surged out like flowing water. This power was completely different from that of a great celestial immortal. Although it was done casually, the entire space-time was distorted, and it surged towards the great celestial immortals who filled the sky. Hua Huan's group. Pieces of runes condensed into bright flower petals and flew out. They flipped irregularly in the space-time turbulence and seemed to emit a moving fragrance. Zhang Xiu was a few miles away. His expression changed, and he said to Qin Qing beside him, "Quick, escape to the right." Qin Qing didn't understand. Hua Luiying was so far away from them. Did junior brother Jiang think that she could threaten them with a wave of her hand? Escape. She didn't think so, but of course she believed Zhang Xiu's words. The two of them flew to the side. Boom! Hua Huan's group felt like the Big Bang caused by the passage of spacetime. The great celestial kings at the front widened their eyes in shock. They had never challenged a celestial king before, and the power in front of them made them feel despair. Fight! It was too late to dodge. The tens of great heavenly immortals unleashed all their magic powers as well. Both their hands formed hand seals as they pushed forward like wheels. This was their strongest attack, unleashing their full power. All kinds of colorful lights surged, crushing and strangling. The battle was incomparably dazzling. However, the dozen or so grand celestial immortals joined forces and perfectly performed an idiom, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. When the flower illusion current surged over, they were like a lone boat in the sea encountering a stormy sea. When the 1,000-meter-tall waves came crashing over, they were destroyed. They had no power to resist at all. The magic that filled the sky collapsed in the air, and the grand celestial immortals were sent flying one by one. Whoosh! The ferocious air pressure rushed over, crushing the wild grass and flowers on the ground, as well as the rocks and trees on both sides of the road, into powder. In the blink of an eye, it had already traveled several li. The heavenly immortals who were watching from afar had no time to dodge at all. All they could do was widen their eyes in horror as their bodies exploded into wreckage. Oh my God! Qin Qing was dumbfounded. If Jiang Xiu hadn't taken him one step ahead, they would have been like the flesh and blood in front of them, slowly flowing down from the sky. How terrifying! Was this the power of an immortal king? The grand celestial immortals' bodies were much stronger. They weren't like heavenly immortals who had perfected great Daos protecting their bodies. However, they all fell heavily to the ground, spitting out blood as they wailed in pain. They were seriously injured and couldn't get up. They were basically powerless to attack. Humph! Can't even withstand a single blow. Hua Luiying snorted disdainfully. The people who were rushing over were all stunned when they saw this scene. This was too terrifying. More than 10 grand celestial immortals were defeated in one move, and so many innocent heavenly immortals were implicated. No one dared to approach anymore. Beside her, Lu Li was trembling all over. Master's strength was much stronger than she had imagined. Does anyone else want a share of the loot? Su Qingquan and the others fell to the ground and struggled to prop up half of their bodies. Their faces were pale and they couldn't summon any magic power. No matter how unwilling they were, it was useless. They weren't a match at all. They could only glance at the beast egg. It was within reach, but they would never be able to touch it. It was so close, yet so far. Jiang Xiu said, "Come, let's go over." Over. Qin Qing said, "Don't you want to live anymore?" Previously, she had supported Jiang Xiu in fighting for the beast core, but after seeing Hua Luiying's strength, she completely gave up on this idea. "It's okay." After speaking, the two of them flew over. Hua Luiying frowned. There were still people who weren't afraid of death. Lu Li said from the side, "Master is Jiang Gu. It seems like he won't dare to fight with Master." After Jiang Xiu landed, he cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Sect Master Hua." Hua Luiying wasn't in the mood to deal with Jiang Xiu now. "What, you've taken a fancy to the beast egg too?" Jiang Xiu shook his head and said, "I still want to live for a few more years. The beast egg can only belong to Sect Master Hua." You're indeed much smarter than these idiots. "Then what are you doing here?" Jiang Xiu said, "To witness a miracle. I want to see what kind of earth-shattering changes Sect Master Hua will undergo after obtaining the sacred beast. Perhaps I'll have the chance to witness the birth of an immortal emperor." Jiang Xiu's tone was still cold and dull, but Hua Luiying felt exceptionally comfortable listening to it. "It seems that I've thought too much." She had previously thought of guarding against Jiang Xiu because sometimes, he did indeed remind Hua Luiying of Jiang Luoxia. Also, her own disciple Lu Li's reaction towards her was too strange. She was also mixed up with Jiang Xiu. Although she couldn't say what was going on, she felt uneasy. "You really like to join in the fun." Jiang Xiu bowed and said, "Please grant my wish, Sect Master Hua." "I'll allow it." Hua Luiying was someone who loved to be in the limelight. Under such circumstances, she couldn't wait for more spectators. Jiang Xiu was too familiar with her and knew that she definitely wouldn't reject it. Lu Li's face was a little pale. She said nervously, "Shizuan, let's act quickly. A long delay means trouble. If an immortal king rushes over, we'll be in trouble." "Yes." Hua Luiying glanced at Lu Li with a strange expression. She was once sure that Lu Li already knew that she was the one who killed her senior sisters. Now, it didn't seem like it. If she really found out, why would she remind her? She should be thinking of ways to delay time. Zhang Xiu interrupted and said, I wonder what sect Master Hua's plan is? Hua Luiying said, Zhang Xiu, you're quite rich. Tell me, what should I do next? Zhang Xiu said, there are only two possibilities. The first is, of course, to absorb the green spirit beast's power for your own use. According to Old Mountain's description of the green spirit beast, absorbing 1/10 or even 1/100th of it is enough for you to become an immortal emperor and rule the world. The second is to make the green spirit beast recognize you as its master and raise it into a divine beast. In the future, its power can be on par with the green spirit beast. This is probably 1 or 2 levels higher than an immortal emperor. Hua Luiying nodded slightly and said, you're right. There are indeed only 2 possibilities. Which one do you think I should choose? Zhang Xiu said without hesitation, the first. Oh, why? Zhang Xiu said, absorb the green spirit beast's power. Although you lose the green spirit beast, the power belongs to you. It's fast and steady. On the other hand, the second option is to raise a beast. I don't know how to raise one, but before the green spirit beast grows, it's inevitable that there won't be people who are afraid of Sect Master Hua's future threat and join forces to annihilate you. Hua Luiying listened and nodded repeatedly. What Zhang Xiu said was right. Qingling beast needed time to grow, and before that, she would be in trouble because of her wealth. I also plan to directly absorb the green spirit beast's power. Hua Luiying's eyes blazed. Once she absorbed the green spirit beast's power, she would advance to become an immortal emperor. In the current immortal martial continent, there were almost no immortal emperors. Once she became an immortal emperor, she would be the subject of thousands of sections. Those who looked down on her and offended her would all pay the price. Humph. Her gaze fell on the beast egg. The beast egg was 1 meter in size. It was shiny and emitted a soft light. There were strange runes drawn on the shell. Those were runes that she had never seen before and were very ancient. Just by looking at these runes, she could feel the green spirit beast's power. Then I'll begin. After speaking, she stretched out her slender hand and pressed on the shell, beginning to absorb the power inside. Chapter 658. At this moment, everyone's eyes widened involuntarily. A moment that would go down in history was descending. An immortal emperor might be born in front of their eyes. On the other hand, Lu Li's face was pale and cold sweat was dripping from her forehead. She was very nervous, so nervous that her hands and feet were cold. While everyone was paying attention to the beast egg, her eyes were looking for Zhang Xiu. Zhang Xiu's expression was still indifferent. The beast egg shone with a strong light, making his face look so cold. Lu Li hurriedly turned her head to look and was shocked. Hua Luiying's eyes kept flashing strangely, but then she frowned. She could feel that the life in the beast egg was even wriggling. The little guy was even a little scared. However, she tried to absorb but couldn't absorb any power. Strange. Why can't I feel any power or absorb any power? How can this be? Hua Luiying's slender palm turned over and her 5 fingers moved. The black cyclone light faintly formed a whirlpool in her palm. It was incomparably evil. Zhang Xiu had seen an evil technique before. It could instantly absorb a huge beast that weighed a few 100 kilograms, leaving nothing behind. This move of hers was probably even more overbearing than that person's. Humph. Hua Luiying's palm slowly pressed against the beast egg. The beast egg seemed to feel threatened and vibrated slightly. However, no matter how strong you will be when you mature, at this moment, you are just an egg. At most, you are just a slightly bigger egg. Little thing. Hua Luiying's jade hand pressed against it mercilessly. One could see the strong suction force in her palm. Everyone held their breaths. Why can't I feel any power? There's not even a trace of power. There's only life? Hua Luiying could only let go. Her willowy eyebrows were tightly knitted. Jiang Xiu muttered, "The green spirit beast is said to be an extraordinary ancient beast. It must be very strong in self-defense. Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I'm afraid that even an immortal king might not be able to hurt it." Hua Luiying nodded after hearing this. That makes sense. An ancient beast should be incomparably strong even in its infancy. Otherwise, if it could survive, then it's a little troublesome. She couldn't think of a way to absorb the green spirit beast's power. Looks like I can only use the second method. Jiang Xiu said, "Sect Master is talking about using a drop of blood to refine the verdant spirit beast into a divine pet." She nodded slightly. This was the only way. Originally, she wanted to make the green spirit beast her natal divine beast. Since ancient times, people had raised powerful exotic beasts. With an ancient divine beast as her natal divine beast, it was only a matter of time before she became an immortal emperor. With an equally powerful exotic beast as her natal divine beast, it was equal to having 2 immortal emperors. However, Jiang Xiu's first method sounded more eager for quick success and benefits, which was in line with her current situation, so she chose the first method. Hua Luiying bit his finger and squeezed out a drop of essence blood. He even took out a talisman. Jiang Xiu said, "So Sect Master Hua has already prepared everything. It seems that I've been meddlesome." Hua Luiying smiled proudly. "Don't tell me that at my age, I'm not as experienced as a fledgling like you. Of course, I have to prepare the blood-dripping talisman." It was rare for Hua Luiying to crack a joke. It could be seen that she was in a good mood. However, she realized that Liuli's breathing was problematic and her face was frighteningly pale. If one looked closely, her fingers were even trembling slightly. Hua Luiying felt a little regretful. If only the Jiang Xiu in front of her was that all-powerful Jiang Luoxia. He probably wouldn't have thought that I would have such a day. Such a great opportunity. Contract. As she spoke, she slapped her talisman onto the beast egg, and a violent blood-red light exploded with a bang. Following that, the talisman's light also appeared. The beast egg gave off a feeling of joy, and Hua Luiying revealed a charming smile. This little guy is quite happy. All of a sudden, all of the light entered the egg. Finally, it condensed into the word, contract, and slowly disappeared on the beast shell. Congratulations, Master. Congratulations, Master. Hua Luiying laughed heartily and opened her hands excitedly. She felt that from now on, she had the whole world. She didn't need to raise her nose in the air anymore. Instead, everyone had to bow down to her. What a pity, what a pity. Jiang Luoxia, what a pity that you're already dead. I didn't get to see this scene. The Hua Luiying that you looked down on and sneered at, is going to become a celestial emperor. Celestial emperor. The last roar resounded through the heavens and earth, echoing in the ancient temple. It didn't dissipate for a long time. Hua Luiying's gaze became incomparably sharp and more domineering than usual. Lu Li's nervous and fearful expression slowly disappeared and was replaced by sadness. Hua Luiying found this expression to be rather strange. Liuli, aren't you happy for honored master? Liuli's tone was a little flat. Happy. Honored master, Liuli has a question that I've always wanted to ask you. Hua Luiying was in a good mood. She flicked her sleeves and said, "Ask away." Liuli looked directly at honored master's face. She had never been so brave to look directly at honored master. Liuli wants to know why honored master killed those senior sisters. Senior sister Dong Wan, senior sister Lu Meinyang, senior sister Shui Hua, senior sister Itongzi. Hearing this, all the sisters present widened their eyes in shock. Liuli, what nonsense are you talking about? Quickly apologize to honored master. One of Hua Zhejian's disciples was so scared that her face turned pale. Hua Luiying's brows furrowed slightly, but very quickly, a strange smile appeared on her face. In the past, she was still afraid, but now that she had obtained the green spirit beast, she was going to become a celestial emperor. What could Hua Zhejian's elders do to her? Her eyes were frighteningly cold. As expected, you already know. Hearing Hua Luiying admit it personally, Liuli's eyes were filled with endless grief. Why did you kill them? Hua Luiying said, because they deserved to die. A disciple actually wanted to compete with honored master for beauty and fame. Don't you think they deserved to die? Liuli didn't understand and said agitatedly, just because those senior sisters were beautiful and became famous? Hua Luiying said, that's not enough. Every one of Hua Zhejian's female disciples present was stunned. Liuli said, then, honored master, will you kill me? Will I? Hua Luiying secretly shook her head, her face carrying a sneer. My foolish disciple, you're too foolish. Why did you have to say it out loud? You could totally pretend that you didn't know. That way you would have a chance to live. You've revealed everything. Do you think that honored master would let you off? There was no fear on Liuli's face, nor was there any annoyance. There wasn't even any sadness, only relief. Honored master, Liuli was so scared. Scared of doing something wrong, but now Liuli finally doesn't have to be scared anymore. These words confused Hua Luiying. What do you mean? Liuli said, Zhongguo is absolutely right. Hua Luiying's gaze swept towards Zhong Xiu. You told her? Her eyes contained a terrifying, murderous intent. In the past, she was still a little afraid of Qianqing School, but now, who would she be afraid of? Zhong Xiu nodded and said, Indeed, I told her. Hua Luiying's gaze became even colder. You've got guts, daring to sow discord in my Hua Zhejian. This honored master thinks you're alive. Zhong Xiu said, I just don't want the tragedy to repeat itself on her. Moreover, what I said was far more than that. Hua Luiying looked at Zhong Xiu and sneered. Then what else did you say? Zhong Xiu smiled faintly and pointed at the beast egg in the distance. He walked over and said, There's also this. 100 underworlds converged, 7 stars aligned, the firmament opened its eyes, the blue spirit appeared. Hua Luiying frowned and said, What does this have to do with you? Seeing Zhong Xiu walk towards the beast egg, Hua Luiying didn't think much of it. The beast egg couldn't even threaten her, much less Zhong Xiu, a good-for-nothing whose life artifact had been shattered. A strange sound came from the beast egg. It was a sizzling sound, as if the little guy inside was moving and wanted to break out of its shell. According to Zhai Xing Lu's records, this kind of celestial phenomenon only appears once every 100,000 years. The last time it appeared was over 70,000 years ago. Hua Luiying's expression changed. What do you mean? She had an inexplicable bad feeling in her heart. Bang! A crisp sound rang out and a crack appeared on the beast egg. Was the ancient beast, the blue spirit beast, about to come out? I mean, it's impossible for this kind of celestial phenomenon to appear now. Chapter 659. The sound of the egg cracking resounded incessantly. The little guy inside was trying its best to break out of the egg. It couldn't wait to break out of the egg. The smooth surface of the egg cracked like a spider web. At first, it was sparse, but later, the entire egg was densely covered with cracks. It was going to break out of the shell. Hua Luiying's gaze darkened. She looked at Zhong Xiu and said darkly, Brat, explain it clearly to me. What do you mean it's impossible for such a celestial phenomenon to appear? Zhong Xiu smiled faintly. Haven't I made it clear enough? 100 underworlds gathering, 7 stars aligned, Tsong Tsong opening his eyes, and a green spirit appearing. Such a celestial phenomenon only appears once in 100,000 years. The last time was over 70,000 years ago. There's still 30,000 years left until now. A female disciple of Hua Zhejian said, but the celestial phenomenon clearly appeared. Zhong Xiu said, These celestial phenomena are fake. Fake. Hua Luiying's eyes shot towards Zhong Xiu. Murderous intent surged, but she still had doubts in her heart. Fake. How can it be fake? Everyone saw all the celestial phenomena. The Hall of Consonants also said that 100 underworlds gathering, 7 stars aligned, Tsong Tsong opening his eyes, and a green spirit appearing. Jiang Xiu said, "Hua Luiying, you're too careless." Hearing Jiang Xiu call her name directly, the anger on Hua Luiying's face grew. But she still held it in. She wanted to hear what Jiang Xiu had to say. "Look at the surrounding valleys. Where does it look like it was destroyed by a natural disaster? It's lush green and peaceful." Indeed, the Hall of Consonants did say that 100 underworlds gathering, 7 stars aligned, Tsong Tsong opening his eyes, and a green spirit appearing. But don't forget, Qingling Mountain asked what would happen after a natural disaster. If such a celestial phenomenon really happened, then the above words would naturally come true. But now it's not. All of this is a fake celestial phenomenon created by Zhai Xinglu, Hua Luiying, and the group of disciples, as well as the surrounding crowd, were dumbfounded when they saw the surrounding valley. Qin Qing had felt that it was strange just now. The electromagnetic cloud was so powerful that even the void could not withstand it. It should have destroyed everything when it landed on the ground, but there was not a single trace of destruction on the ground. It turned out that everything was fake. Hua Luiying's expression turned ugly. "There's no reason, no reason." Zhai Xinglu was born to study astronomical phenomena. Of course, they knew what kind of scene it would be when the 100 underworlds gathered, the 7 stars aligned, the Tsong Tsong opened his eyes, and the green spirit appeared. It was easy for them to imitate it, but they could not replicate the true 100 underworlds gathering, the 7 stars aligned, the Tsong Tsong opened his eyes, and the green spirit appeared. Therefore, there was only the appearance, and it would not cause any disaster. But the egg of the green spirit beast was right in front of her, alive and well. Jiang Xiu said, "Of course it's also fake." Ah! The surroundings were in an uproar. Not only Hua Luiying and her disciples, but also the lucky survivors in the distance were in an uproar. If that was really the case, then it was too ironic. There was a bang. The beast egg cracked open, and a small black animal jumped out from inside. Medicine Mole Rat. Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts crumbled. Medicine mole rats were very common low-level beasts in the mountains. They liked to steal medicinal herbs. Because of their large and cumbersome bodies, they were famous for being easy to catch. Not to mention cultivators, even ordinary people could subdue them. When the medicine mole rat came out, its eyes were still hazy, but its ears were trembling non-stop. It bumped around in all directions, and with a clang, it hit a rock and fell to the ground. Such a plaything. There was a strange red contract mark on the medicine mole rat's forehead. It was indeed the natal divine beast that she had just signed a contract with. Chirp chirp. Chirp chirp. Hua Luiying's facial features, which were known to be the most beautiful in the world, were distorted, and her eyes twitched. This thing, a filthy and unbearable medicine mole rat, had become the natal divine beast of the dignified sect master Hua Zijian. Chirp chirp. The medicine mole rat hit its head on the rock again. Hua. There was another uproar. For this thing, they had fought for so long and so many people had died. Everyone present felt that it was laughable and lamentable. But no matter how laughable and lamentable it was, it couldn't compare to Hua Luiying. They had really been played to death. Hua Luiying's expression had become unusually ugly. It had even turned white. Yes, this little medicine mole rat was her natal divine beast. It was closely related to her life. Not only was its ugliness useless, but it would also become Hua Luiying's Achilles' heel. Just like back then, when Jiang Xiu obtained his natal divine weapon, the Heaven's Inquisition Stone did give him a lot of power, but it also gave him an additional weakness. He was restrained by the snake blood. Now, it was the same for Hua Luiying. This was her natal divine beast. If it died or was injured, it would have a huge impact on her. Hua Luiying realized that she had been cheated miserably. But in the next moment, her face turned completely pale. Cold sweat dripped down her forehead. All she saw was that while her attention was on Jiang Xiu, Lu Li had unknowingly come to the side of the medicine mole rat. She reached out and picked it up, controlling it in her own hands. At this moment, a chill spread out in all directions. Everyone became silent. Everyone understood what the current situation meant. Lu Li, my good disciple, return the medicine mole rat to master, return it to master. Good. Lu Li looked at her indifferently. Her eyes were full of ridicule. For this moment, Jiang Xiu and her could be said to have used up all their tricks. Return it to you, and then you'll kill me? Hua Luiying's entire face was so frightened that she couldn't control herself. She was pale and bloodless. Cold sweat poured down her body. Her hands and feet were trembling. What are you doing? Lu Li said, What do you think? What do you think I'm doing? You have one of the best ocular techniques in the world. You should be able to see the situation after Jiang Ji's natal artifact is damaged. It's the same for his natal pet. Tell me, if I break its neck, what will you do? Hua Luiying's body shook violently. She shouted, No, don't. Lu Li, Benzong is your Shizhuan. Although Benzong is usually strict with you, Benzong has also nurtured you into a talent. Anger appeared on Lu Li's face. You still dare to talk about it? Don't forget how you treated my senior sisters. But Benzong didn't hurt you. Lu Li said, Don't try to lie to me again. I asked you just now, and you admitted it yourself. If you weren't under my control now, you definitely wouldn't let me go. Just like how you killed senior sister Dong Wan, senior sister Lu Meinyang, senior sister Shui Hua, and senior sister Yi Tongxi, kill me. Her hand strangled the medicine mole rat's neck. There was a cracking sound and a blood-curdling cry. She couldn't even let out a cry. No. Hua Luiying's face turned pale. She suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Her face was covered in cold sweat, and her dense pores were trembling. Her body was so weak that she couldn't stand up and fell to the ground. She was in so much pain that she couldn't even speak. Her natal godly pet was destroyed. Jiang Xiu had experienced this the most. The moment her natal godly item was destroyed, she felt as though she had died once. The spiritual energy in her body disappeared along with it, and her natal godly item was greatly damaged. How could this be? How could this be? Hua Luiying's face was contorted in pain. Her eyes were filled with endless pain and hatred. A dignified immortal king was actually played by two ants to this extent. She knew that Lu Li didn't have such calculation and knowledge. Everything was because of Jiang Xiu, that scum from the Qianqing school, and Jiang Luoxia. Jiang Xiu said, Hua Luiying, do you have the confidence to cultivate again? It was just that her cultivation was destroyed. She could cultivate again. Hua Luiying hated that she couldn't eat Jiang Xiu's flesh and drink his blood. Immortal king, how could she cultivate again? Furthermore, she was now crippled and bore so many blood debts from the sect. In the past, no one dared to provoke her as the sect leader and immortal king. But now, she would definitely be stripped of her position as sect leader. She wouldn't be able to escape the blood debt of killing disciples. The most ideal outcome would be to be expelled from the sect. She knew that she was done for. Done for. She was a woman without roots, wandering around freely. She could have been an ordinary person, but she was so beautiful. As soon as she stepped out of flower-covered stream, she would probably be sullied by others. The biggest possibility was that she would end up in a brothel. Her jade arms would be pillowed by thousands, and her red lips would be tasted by tens of thousands. She would become a man's plaything. Hua Luiying, you've also tasted the feeling of being betrayed by someone close to you. Are you still satisfied? Chapter 660. Hua Luiying's golden crown fell to the ground. Her hair scattered all over her head, and she was in a daze. A moment ago, she was still a high and mighty celestial king. In the next moment, she had been reduced to this state. And all of this was because she had been defeated by Jiang Xiu, whose cultivation had been crippled. She raised her head and looked at Jiang Xiu in disbelief. Why did you harm me like this? Why? The more Hua Luiying thought about it, the more she felt that something was amiss. She had learned from Zhai Xinglu that the celestial phenomenon of 100 underworlds converging, the 7 stars aligned, and Song Tsong opening his eyes would appear at Qingling Mountain. In other words, the other party had started his plan from Zhai Xinglu. Subsequently, Zhai Xinglu had created a series of illusions. Finally, Qingling had appeared, and the fatal link of his plan had been the appearance of Qingling. In other words, he had known from the beginning that 100 underworlds converging, the 7 stars aligned, and after Song Tsong opening his eyes, Qingling would appear. How did you know that 100 underworlds converging, the 7 stars aligned, and after Song Tsong opening his eyes, Qingling would appear? If it weren't for the fact that this was a secret she had kept for more than 700 years and had to be verified by the Consonance Pavilion, she would never have used her cultivation base as a celestial king to refine a beast egg with no cultivation base as her life divine tool. She would never have entrusted her fate to something else. She firmly believed in the arrival of the verdant spirit beast. And Zhang Xiu had grasped this point. Zhang Xiu smiled coldly. Why? With this smile, Hua Luiying seemed to see that all-powerful genius. He also knew this because they had entered the remains together that year. You, who exactly are you? Zhang Xiu said. Is it important who I am? No matter who Zhang Xiu was, this result could not be changed. It's important, it's important. Hua Luiying screamed like a madwoman. Her eyes widened as she stared fixedly at Zhang Xiu. She wanted to hear his answer. She wanted to know whether Zhang Xiu was Qingling or not. Zhang Xiu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Everyone will pay the price. Boom! Hua Luiying's brain exploded. It really was him. It really was him. He actually didn't die and even came back. Although Zhang Xiu didn't admit it, his words sounded like an admission to Hua Luiying's ears. She looked at Lu Li. At this moment, Lu Li's face was relaxed without a trace of guilt. She had become Zhang Xiu's executioner. At the most crucial moment, when Zhang Xiu had attracted Hua Luiying's attention, she had controlled her natal pet and dealt her a fatal blow. Indeed, if it weren't for Lu Li's betrayal, she would still be able to protect her natal divine pet. Although she would have an additional fatal weakness and trouble, she wouldn't have suffered such a heavy fatal blow so quickly. You traitor! Faced with Hua Luiying's responsibility, Azurite said calmly, I was just protecting myself. On the cliff, Mr. Mo Ku and his disciples were all sighing incessantly. They really didn't think that this matter would actually be a shocking scam. Not just Hua Luiying, but everyone else had been deceived by Zhang Xiu. Mr. Mo Ku, his disciples, and those who had lost their lives for the sake of obtaining the green spirit beast. Who would have thought that all of this was fake? This was a trap targeted at the immortal king. To be able to trap an immortal king like this, Zhang Xiu was probably unprecedented even if no one in the future could do it. This person first broke through the Golden Sun unbreakable body, then broke through the sword spirit body, and now even an immortal king was in his hands. Demon, truly a demon. If one were to say who was the most stunning in this year's green spirit role, it would undoubtedly be Zhang Xiu. However, his stunning talent was in intelligence and not in cultivation talent. It turned out that a person's intelligence could be so powerful. Mr. Mo Ku wondered if green spirit should also set up a ranking for scheming. The valley became silent. The wind blew quietly and the branches swayed. Only the corpses of the mole rats on the ground and Hua Luiying, who was like a living corpse, could be seen. Kill her! Someone shouted. Hua Luiying had just killed so many people and injured so many great immortal kings. Now that she was crippled, everyone wanted to take the opportunity to take revenge. Wait. Lapis Lazuli stood out and stopped the people who wanted to take revenge. Even though my master has wronged me, she is still my sect master. If you want to take revenge, you will have to go through all of my sisters first. As long as one of them is still standing, don't even think about killing my master. On the ground, Hua Luiying was paralyzed. Her eyes were looking at the sky, but her gaze was unfocused. She was already a dead person if she was alive. She didn't have Zhang Xiu's courage to cultivate again as an immortal king. She even felt that living would be more painful. She might as well die. However, she didn't have the courage to die. Princess Lapis Lazuli, she is an old witch. She was jealous of her own disciple and dared to kill her. She is worse than a beast. Do you still want to protect her? Lapis Lazuli glanced at Hua Luiying, who was paralyzed on the ground. Even if she is in the wrong, Lapis Lazuli will bring her back to Hua Luiying and let the sect elders deal with her. Hearing this, the group of people fell silent. No one stepped forward again. Sect leader, get up. A female disciple helped her up. Hua Luiying, on the other hand, was in a daze. Her fiery red robe was covered with mud and fallen leaves. There were also a few dried leaves in her hair. Hua, Hua! She shouted happily as if she had seen a bright flower in the distance. She ran over, plucked the flower and put it on her head. She turned and said, "Does it look good?" Her gaze was turbid and she was in a daze. She had actually gone crazy. Master! The group of disciples wailed. Hua Luiying, who had the best voice and the best color in the world, had actually gone crazy. Mad, has she gone crazy? Those who witnessed this scene sighed. Take Master back. Such a big accident had happened in the Azure Spirit leaderboard this time. Although Azure Spirit Mountain still wanted to continue, many people began to leave one after another. On the lonely peak of the courtyard rented by Tianqing School, Jiang Xiu stood tall and straight. His eyes stared straight at the rolling clouds in front of him. Behind him, Lapis Lazuli's sweet and somewhat sorrowful voice said, "From the beginning, you got close to Lapis Lazuli. Was it to deal with my master?" Jiang Xiu didn't answer. Don't deny it. Although Lapis Lazuli isn't as astonishingly intelligent as you, she's not a fool either. Jiang Xiu said, "Isn't it good now?" Lapis Lazuli persisted and asked, "Lapis Lazuli just wants to know. Yes or no?" Jiang Xiu sighed and said, "Your master killed so many of your senior sisters out of jealousy. These are all absolutely true. Sooner or later she will make a move on you." Lapis Lazuli said, "You and my master have old grudges." Jiang Xiu fell silent once again. Lapis Lazuli frowned. Looking at Jiang Xiu's back, she felt that this person was even more mysterious and unpredictable. His schemes ran deep. "Who exactly are you? Is this important?" Lapis Lazuli said, "Jiang Ge, you and I have known each other for a while and have gone through life and death together. Can't you be honest with Lapis Lazuli? Maybe in the future. There will be a chance in the future." Lapis Lazuli saw that Jiang Xiu insisted on not being honest with her, and her eyes revealed disappointment. She felt that she had been unconditionally honest with Jiang Xiu and treated him with sincerity, but Jiang Xiu had been holding back from the beginning. "Are you very close to Zhai Xinglu?" Jiang Xiu said, "It's not that bad." Of course it was close. The current head of Zhai Xinglu had received a favor from Jiang Xiu in the past. Speaking of which, it was also related to the ancient site that Hua Luiying had found together. In that place, there were many descriptions of astronomical phenomena. Jiang Xiu had given the collection of books inside to Zhai Xinglu. To the average person, it might be useless, but to Zhai Xinglu, it was of great use. Since then, Zhai Xinglu owed Jiang Xiu a huge favor. Jiang Xiu wanted to set a trap for Hua Luiying, so he used this layer of relationship. He wanted Zhai Xinglu to lure the snake out of its hole. "We have to leave Qingling and return to Hua Zhejian." Such a big thing had happened to Hua Zhejian, and the sect leader had gone crazy. The sect would definitely be in chaos. Of course, they had to rush back. Jiang Xiu replied faintly. "We have to go back too. Su Qingquan is also seriously injured." He requested to return to the sect early. "He is the peak leader, so we can only comply." Then, Lapis looked at Jiang Xiu. When they first met, the man in front of her was deeply resistant. Now, when she wanted to get close to him, he pushed her away without any reluctance. "Let's meet again if fate wills it." Although he had helped Lapis escape from a possible misfortune, he had still used her. Jiang Xiu still felt a trace of guilt in his heart. He muttered to himself, let's meet again if fate wills it. If there comes a day when you encounter something you can't solve, you can come to Qianqing School to find me. I should return it to you." At that time, Jiang Xiu believed that he should be able to restore his identity as Jiang Luoxia. Chapter 661. Su Qingquan's injuries were very serious. Hua Luiying's furious attack had been too powerful to be able to keep his life, and with the heavenly Tao protection at the great circle of Tao arts, even if his injuries were not as serious as when his natal relic was shattered, they were not far off. At this moment, he was sprawled on the bed, unable to sit up. His gaze was lifeless. When Jiang Xiu came in, he looked at him with a pair of resentful eyes. Su Qingquan felt that Jiang Xiu was the one who caused him to end up like this. If Jiang Xiu had not faked the so-called appearance of your verdant spirit beast, he would not have gone to snatch it. If he had not snatched it, he would not have been injured so badly. "Junior brother Jiang, are you ready? You didn't pull anything, right? If not, we'll go home." Qin Qing took on most of the trivial matters. Jiang Xiu nodded slightly. He naturally felt Su Qingquan's resentful gaze. If he had not been greedy and overestimated himself by fighting with the immortal king for the verdant spirit beast, he would not have ended up like this. Today's situation was entirely his own fault. Who was he to blame? However, he, Jiang Luoxia, had many enemies. Who did he think he was? Jiang Xiu did not care about this kind of hatred at all. The reason why Su Qingquan rushed back in such a hurry was because the sect had an immortal king-level immortal doctor, Supreme Sparrow. His injuries were different from his life-divine artifact. He could still recover as long as he spent a considerable amount of resources and wealth. But with his identity as a peak master, there was no reason for the sect not to save him. Under normal circumstances, even if an ordinary disciple was seriously injured, the sect wouldn't hesitate to save him. "You said goodbye to Princess Glaze?" Jiang Xiu said, Qin Qing said meaningfully, "That Princess Glaze is a mortal character. You helped her so much. Logically speaking, she should thank you properly." Qin Qing did not know that from the beginning, Jiang Xiu had been using her. "There's nothing to thank me for." Qin Qing said, "I'm a girl. I can see that she really wants to thank you. In addition, she has the godly charm physique. If she dual cultivates, it will be greatly beneficial to Junior Brother's natal relic." Jiang Xiu smiled indifferently. Some people still have self-awareness. Although Su Qingquan was seriously injured, his hearing was not affected at all. How can he possess a character like Glaze? How can he protect her? He will only bring disaster upon himself to lose his life. Qin Qing's expression. Although Peak Master's Glaze, it was indeed true. She thought that Jiang Xiu should have had concerns in this regard. She secretly blamed herself for being too talkative. Junior brothers. Glaze to the N2s. The flying boat turned back to Qingzhou. A few days later, the Qianqing Mountains were in front of them. It had been more than half a month since he left Qianqing School that day. At that time, it was on a whim and he didn't think too much about it. More importantly, he wanted to avoid the two elders. If he didn't leave, they might come up with a way to prove that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia. As soon as he arrived at Qianqing School, Su Qingquan couldn't wait to say, "I want to see the sect master." He didn't even care about his injuries. Ji Daozong spent most of his time in seclusion during this period of time. The construction of the sect master's heart site was in full swing. He didn't need to personally supervise this kind of thing. He only needed to send a disciple over. Seeing that Su Qingquan was carried in, Ji Daozong came down from his high seat. His eyes flashed with a strange and fierce light. "Peak Master Su, what's the matter?" The Qianqing school must not be bullied. "Sect Master, this is a long story." Now that he was seriously injured, it would be pointless to say anything else. In a situation where he had time to heal himself, if he wanted to keep his position as the Peak Master, he had to perform meritorious deeds. He had the capital to perform meritorious deeds. Sect Master, I have something important to report. Ji Daozong said. No hurry. Summon Elder Wushang Quebec. Su Qingquan couldn't wait. Sect Master, this matter concerns the future of Qianqing School. It also concerns whether you can cultivate to the immortal emperor realm. Oh. Ji Daozong's expression changed. What's the matter? Su Qingquan said. Jiang Xiu unexpectedly saw through the flaw of the Golden Sun unbreakable body in Qingling Mountain. He exchanged a question with the Lingxi Pavilion. What? Full authority. Ji Daozong's expression finally couldn't remain calm. If there was anyone in the world who knew the secret of becoming an immortal emperor, then the Lingxi Pavilion was undoubtedly one, and it was 100% accurate. Good, that's great. Ji Daozong was so excited that his face turned red. He had waited for this opportunity for too long. Now, the opportunity had finally arrived. Where's Jiang Xiu? Jiang Xiu returned to the sect. Li Chong and the two servant girls had already returned. Their spirits were not high. The death of Shan Guan Zhaorong was not a light blow to them. The three of them were Jiang Xiu's servants, especially Zhaorong and the two servant girls. They were as close as sisters. Young master. Jiang Xiu's expression was indifferent. Sister Zhaorong, is it true? Jiang Xiu threw out a small jade pendant and said to them, Zhaorong's burial ground. If you want to go take a look. However, there's nothing to see. It's just a grave. These words made everything clear. Jiang Xiu returned to his residence. Behind him, the soft sobbing of the two servant girls could be heard. Jiang Xiu's gaze dimmed. No matter how strong one was, there would always be things that they could not do. Moreover, she, Jiang Xiu, was still very far from being truly strong. In the most mysterious mountain range of the immortal martial continent, the clouds were faintly discernible. It was a spiritual mountain that spanned tens of thousands of li, the spirit rhinoceros sacred ground. The pavilion was located between the cliffs. Tens of thousands of stone steps could be seen everywhere. A youth was carrying a pile of information that was taller than him. He was running through a group of fellow disciples. Make way, the youth shouted. Old Pavilion Master needs it urgently. His voice was still echoing in the mountain, but he had already disappeared. Old Pavilion Master, the information you wanted on Zhang Luoxia. The information of the dead would be stored in another place. According to time, the information would be categorized according to the person's rank. Zhang Luoxia was undoubtedly an A grade. Give it to me. Zhang Luoxia's information was so much that a room couldn't fit it all. Does Old Pavilion Master think that Jiang Xiu is related to Zhang Luoxia? The Old Pavilion Master said, 100 underworlds gather, 7 stars align, firmament opens, blue spirit appears. Back then, only Zhang Luoxia and Hua Luiying knew of this proverb. Jiang Xiu's plot was set on blue spirit's appearance. How did he know? And at Qianqing School, he was once suspected to be Zhang Luoxia. The youth was shocked. Old Pavilion Master means that Zhang Luoxia didn't die. He came back. How is this possible? Back then, many people saw him die with their own eyes. On the other side of the bookshelf was an old woman. Tricks like coming back from the dead have been played out many times in the immortal martial continent. There's nothing absolute in the world. However, this matter is a bit inconceivable. Zhang Luoxia was an immortal, and the current Jiang Xiu is a god. However, this child is really as monstrous as Zhang Luoxia. Without any cultivation, he actually used a scheme to force an immortal king into a corner. Truly terrifying. Second Pavilion Master also thinks that Jiang Xiu is Zhang Luoxia. Second Pavilion Master said, Our Pavilion of Consonants never does things based on intuition. Instead, we boldly speculate and reasonably seek confirmation. If we don't have concrete evidence that Jiang Xiu is Zhang Luoxia, then our Pavilion of Consonants' answer is that we don't know. Old Pavilion Master said, The information clearly states that Zhang Luoxia did indeed collect the true netherworld water and the earth dragon fire snake. Zhang Xiu did indeed use these two items in Buzhou to raise his cultivation. In addition, we've already confirmed that the escape technique Zhang Xiu used to evade the pursuit of the reincarnation palace several times was the Qianqing school's secret technique, the fire escape heavenly technique. The youth said, "Old pavilion master, this is concrete evidence." Second pavilion lord said, "More importantly, Hua Luiying, who killed Zhang Luoxia and Hua Zhejian, was one of the murderers. Now that Hua Luiying has been harmed by Zhang Xiu, it should be revenge." That's right, that's right. Zhang Xiu is Zhang Luoxia. Then can we, the Consonance Pavilion, give you a definite answer? Not long after Zhang Xiu entered the room, a disciple came to pass on a message. "Junior brother Zhang," the sect master said. Chapter 662. Logically speaking, Zhang Xiu didn't have anything to do with the Ji Daoist sect, and the sect was in a turbulent period. He didn't even have time to take care of his own troubles. Needless to say, Su Qingquan went to see the Ji Daoist sect without even taking care of his injuries. However, when Zhang Xiu was about to get up and go to the Ji Daoist sect, another disciple came. This disciple was wearing the uniform of the enforcement peak with the word Jie written on it. Junior brother Zhang, the enforcement elder, sent a message. The enforcement peak disciples had a very high status in the sect. They were the enforcers, and no one dared to offend them. Zhang Xiu smiled. "Isn't this a coincidence? Both the sect master and the enforcement elder sent me a message. Where should I go?" The disciple from the main peak said, "Of course you're going to the main peak. Do you want to go to the enforcement hall first?" His expression was very ugly. Although the Ji Daoist sect had fallen out with the Tai Hua school, and the Ji Daoist sect's prestige in the sect had fallen greatly, the sect master's dignity was inviolable. The enforcement peak disciple frowned and said with a smile, "Senior brother Ing, of course the sect master's matter is more important. Junior brother Zhang should go to the sect master's place first, and then immediately come to the enforcement peak." Zhang Xiu followed the senior brother Ing to the main peak. The Ji Daoist sect's back was facing the entrance of the hall, and his eyes were fixed on the sect master's throne. Since he was a child, he had knelt on the floor of the hall and saw the high and mighty throne for the first time. It could be said that he would be able to sit on it one day. He did it. After much effort, step by step, he finally reached this day. However, his heart was empty, and everything in front of him was unreal. It was like a dream. He was very angry because when he ascended the throne, many people were against it. Many people still doubted him, and many people slandered him behind his back. Although he really sat on the throne, he always felt that the elders, peak masters, and disciples of the sect weren't loyal to him. They didn't think that he was the sect master of the Qianqing school from the bottom of their hearts. They were forced by him and the Tai Hua school's abuse of power. But now, he ushered in a huge opportunity. Zhang Xiu's hand was holding a question with full authority of the Lingxi. He wanted to ask the hall how to become an immortal emperor. He wanted to surpass the ancestors, surpassing the so-called genius Zhang Luoxia, and become the second emperor of the Qianqing school in tens of thousands of years to surpass his ancestors. And surpass the so-called genius Zhang Luoxia, and become the second genius emperor in the past 10,000 years. To become the second emperor to surpass his. B. Surazss Suru. He. Master, Junior S. 2. Ji Daozong didn't turn around. In his eyes, Zhang Xiu had always been an insignificant character. Although he had some crooked talents, he knew that such a person was still far from being successful. Not to mention that he was already a cripple. Even if he wasn't crippled, his fate was still in the hands of the sect master. If he wanted him to live, he would live. If he wanted him to die, he would die. Zhang Xiu stood at the entrance of the hall. He didn't speak, and neither did Zhang Xiu. He coldly stared at this person, and the killing intent in his eyes grew stronger. Ji Daozong slowly turned around. He found that Zhang Xiu was indeed somewhat different. This person was neither arrogant nor humble to anyone. It could be seen that this person was very proud. "You're here." It was Ji Daozong who spoke. There was no other way. Although he was the sect master, he had a request to ask for, and it was a big one. Zhang Xiu said, "Sect master, I don't know what you want to say." Ji Daozong didn't need to be polite to Zhang Xiu. In his eyes, everything in Tianqing school belonged to him. "This sect heard that the Lingxi Pavilion owes you a question with full authority?" Zhang Xiu said, "There is indeed such a thing." Ji Daozong slowly walked over. He was very tall, and the black feather cloak he wore made his body seem even larger. He was as lofty as a mountain. As he walked over, he carried a powerful monarch's aura. "This sect wants you to give this question to this sect. You can name any conditions you want." Zhang Xiu gently shook his head and said, "I can't give this question to you." Ji Daozong also expected that Zhang Xiu wouldn't agree. It was a question with full authority for the Lingxi Pavilion. He said, "If you give this question to this sect can guarantee your prosperity for the rest of your life." This was simply bullshit. Now that he had a request, he said it so nicely and solemnly, but once his goal was achieved and he was no longer useful, all his previous promises were bullshit. What's more, it was such an empty sentence. Zhang Xiu said, "Forgive this disciple for not being able to do it." Ji Daozong said, "After you go to the new sect, this sect will accept your request to establish a country even bigger than the Jialan dynasty. You will be the emperor. Your Jiang imperial family will be protected by my Tianqing school for generations to come. This matter can be recorded in my Tianqing school's ancestral teachings." The conditions were very tempting. For a cripple, establishing a dynasty was undoubtedly the highest achievement. Zhang Xiu still shook his head. Ji Daozong frowned. "You're still not satisfied. Right now, this is the best place for you to return to. The dynasty can be independent and enjoy a lifetime of honor. If you encounter any problems, the Tianqing school will help you solve them. Why not?" Yes, if Zhang Xiu was just an ordinary disciple, and one whose life artifact had been shattered, establishing a dynasty with the Tianqing school as his backing would truly be the ultimate enjoyment of the human world. But unfortunately, Zhang Xiu wasn't. Zhang Xiu still shook his head. Ji Daozong's anger rose bit by bit. "You're just a disciple, yet you don't understand how to be filial to the sect master after receiving such benefits. It's already a sin to have the sect master speak, yet you're still holding on to it. You don't know what's good for you. So what if this sect allows you to be an elder?" This was the biggest concession he could make. He had to bear a lot of pressure to let a cripple become an elder of the Tianqing school. However, there were also benefits. It just so happened that several elders had fallen and vacated their positions. He could use them to his advantage. His words were extremely domineering. Over the years, there hadn't been many sect masters in the Tianqing school who could make such a promise casually. Zhang Luoxia should be able to do so. He had always adopted high-handed means. He was barbaric and overbearing, but people were helpless against him. Fortunately, he didn't focus on cultivating his own power and tactics. Therefore, he didn't interfere much with the sect. He was more like a ruler who didn't do anything. After hearing this, Zhang Xiu sneered. "Even if you give me the position of sect master, I won't change it." This was the truth. Whether it was the sect master or the elder, it was up to the capable. If you didn't have such ability and strength, the people below you would definitely not be convinced. It was fine for a while, but it was impossible to muddle along and wait for death at the top for a lifetime. Moreover, the people below you would definitely rebel against you. "How dare you?" Ji Daozong angrily rebuked. "Sect master, are you worthy?" Zhang Xiu sneered in his heart but didn't say anything. Ji Daozong's eyes gradually turned cold. He finally discovered that the boy in front of him was really fearless. His temper was as hard as a rock. At that time, he dared to openly refuse the marriage at the successor battle. He didn't seem like a new disciple at all. "Zhang Xiu, my patience is very limited. Don't use your little life to test my patience. You can only suffer losses. As the sect master, it was easy for him to convict a little disciple. As long as he said that you were disrespectful to the sect master and that you offended the sect master, he could convict you. It was as simple as crushing an ant. Zhang Xiu said, "Sect master wants to rob me?" Ji Daozong's face turned red with anger. Zhang Xiu was too ignorant of the situation. "Do you think that I shouldn't make things difficult for a disciple because of my status? Zhang Xiu, this sect master will tell you the truth. Even if you don't want to, you have to." Zhang Xiu's face was also very ugly. He had never seen a sect master so shameless. In order to deprive a disciple of his benefits, he actually threatened him. He really didn't even care about face. The Consonance Pavilion's problem is the disciple's problem. The Consonance Pavilion only recognizes me, Zhang Xiu. Although I am not a great person, neither an elder nor a sect master, I never belittle myself. If others respect me, I will return it. If anyone dares to go against me, I will go against them to the end. Even if I die. Ji Daozong flew into a rage. "You're courting death." With a flip of his palm, a terrifying force rushed out. The powerful force rushed through the void like a stream of light, leaving a long vacuum in its wake. Zhang Xiu narrowed his eyes and quickly retreated. "You don't understand the situation and don't respect the sect master. Even death can't wipe out your crimes." His eyes became incomparably terrifying. Ever since his wife was killed, his temperament became even more extreme. He cared more about his authority as the sect master. If anyone dared to disobey him, he would kill them. Chapter 663. Along with Ji Daozong's killing move, a sharp roar resounded. Zhang Xiu's eyes turned cold. Was he really going to kill him? Did he not want the problem anymore? Although Zhang Xiu was very sure that Ji Daozong would not kill him, at this moment, Zhang Xiu could not rely on Ji Daozong's rationality. He immediately used his escape technique. As a great heavenly god, he could not resist the power of an immortal king. Those who had tried to use the power of a great heavenly god to resist an immortal king in the Bailing Valley had been taught a bloody lesson. Avoiding was the best choice. Stop. Suddenly, a roar came from the distant horizon. A sword light whizzed over. This sword light was so swift and violent that it flashed from afar and slashed into the main hall. Boom! The power burst forth and strangled the sky. The light was boundless, and the air pressure was exploding non-stop. Immediately afterward, two figures flew over. Their speed was not much slower than the sword light. The energy in their hands rolled and blocked all the power that Ji Daozong had continuously pressed over. The strong shock wave dispersed and bypassed them, rushing to the distant horizon. "Sect Master Ji, what are you doing? Are you going to kill Zhang Xiu?" The people who had come were none other than Elder Q-Sword and Elder Law Enforcement. Ji Daozong snorted coldly. The killing intent in his eyes did not weaken at all. However, the arrival of these two elders certainly would not allow Ji Daozong to kill a disciple of the Qianqing school for no reason. Moreover, this disciple was Zhang Xiu, whom they had always thought was Zhang Luoxia. This person has offended the sect. Shouldn't he be killed? Ji Daozong was very angry, especially when Elder Q-Sword had blocked his sword. This had completely aroused the anger in his heart. What was more important was that the other party had blocked it. Not only had he challenged his position as the sect master, but he had also suppressed him in terms of strength. He believed that he had not used his full strength. However, Elder Q-Sword did not know that this would give him and Elder Law Enforcement a wrong signal. The Ji Daozong's strength was only a. This would also encourage these elders to be arrogant. The two patriarchs looked at Zhang Xiu. The patriarch of law enforcement asked, "Did you offend the sect leader?" Hierarchy was very important. Offending one's superiors was punishable by death. Zhang Xiu sneered coldly. Sect Master Ji wanted this disciple's full authority in the Consonance Pavilion. Since he failed, he resorted to coercion. Since coercion failed, he flew into a rage out of humiliation and wanted to kill this disciple. When the two sect masters heard this, they felt a headache coming on. They looked at Ji Daozong with disdain. Was he still a sect master? This was simply a bandit. Anger surfaced on the enforcement elder's face. Sect Master Ji, isn't this a little too inappropriate? Ji Daozong looked at him coldly. What status do you have to criticize me? Are you qualified? The law enforcement elder was furious. He really didn't have the qualifications. The Ji Dao sect was still the sect master, but what kind of sect master was this? He said, "It's true that the law enforcement hall can't control the sect master, but how can we accept that sect master Ji killed a disciple like this? Not only am I not convinced, but the entire Qianqing school will not be convinced either." Ji Daozong's expression was very ugly. Are you going to rebel against me again? Elder Qiujian echoed. No matter what the disciple obtained, if he is willing to hand it over to the sect, it is his filial piety. If he is unwilling, it is his freedom. No one can force him. If the elders of the sect want to take the good things for themselves when they see them, then what will our Qianqing school become? A bandit's nest? Who will enter our Qianqing school in the future? Ji Daozong's face was cold. No matter what he said, this matter was unreasonable. He could only blame these two old men for being in the way. The issue of full authority in the Consonance Pavilion is very precious. I am just worried that he will waste this excellent opportunity. Elder Law Enforcement sneered. Only a fool would believe this. Even Ji Daozong himself wouldn't believe such an excuse. It was just a reminder. Would it make him want to kill someone? Two elders, don't forget that this is a question of full authority in the Consonance Pavilion. The two elders were also very shocked. The opportunity to ask a question of full authority in the Consonance Pavilion was too precious. It was no wonder that Ji Daozong would shamelessly try to steal it. Zhang Xiu, what do you plan to do with this question? In the two elders' opinion, Zhang Xiu was most likely asking how to repair his life artifact. Elder Qiujian was actually hinting that Zhang Xiu should use this question as soon as possible. Even Ji Daozong disregarded his status and openly attacked, let alone other people. Zhang Xiu said, I won't hide it from the two elders. I have already used this question. Used it? The three people present all frowned, especially Ji Daozong. He didn't say anything just now. He didn't believe that Zhang Xiu had already used the question. Elder Law Enforcement asked, What question did you ask the Consonance Pavilion? Zhang Xiu said, Hua Zhujian has a female disciple called Lu Li. She suspects that her master killed the missing senior sisters, so I asked this question. What? The three people present all paled. Zhang Xiu said, Is there something wrong? Elder Law Enforcement said, Shouldn't you ask a more valuable question? For example, how to repair your life artifact, a more profound cultivation technique, or something else. For example, how to become an immortal emperor. Zhang Xiu said, Everyone's situation is different when it comes to repairing their life artifact. As for becoming an immortal emperor, it has nothing to do with me. Why would I ask? The three people present all had ugly expressions. From Zhang Xiu's point of view, this was true. But from their point of view, if Zhang Xiu really asked this question, it would be too much of a waste. Humph. Ji Daozong coldly snorted, Zhang Xiu, do you think we'll believe you just because you say that? Zhang Xiu said, It's easy to believe or not. Just go to the ruined temple and ask the people of the Consonance Pavilion. Won't you get the answer? The three people present looked at each other. This was indeed something that could be answered as soon as they asked. Zhang Xiu said it so calmly. Could it be that he was telling the truth? Go ask. After dispelling Ji Daozong's evil thoughts, Elder Law Enforcement still spoke. Then let's go. Ji Daozong had just fallen into a disadvantageous position, so he wasn't willing to compete in speed this time. He immediately rushed out with a swoosh. His entire body flashed so fast that it felt as if the space had split open. Elder Qian Jian naturally didn't dare to fall behind. With a bang, his entire body turned into a golden light and shot out. The two of them instantly moved dozens of miles away. Elder law enforcement helplessly grabbed Jiang Xiu and chased after them. When Jiang Xiu and Elder Q-Sword arrived, Ji Daozong and Elder Q-Sword were already there. Ji Daozong's expression was calm while Elder Q-Sword's expression was somewhat ugly. It seemed that Ji Daozong was a step faster. Let's begin. Jiang Xiu took out an incense stick and lit it, then inserted it into the incense burner and said, I am Jiang Xiu and I want to ask the Consonance Pavilion a question. This incense was specially made. After the smoke floated up, it curled up into the air and disappeared without a trace. It was as if it had floated to another time and space. Seeing that Jiang Xiuzhen was about to ask questions, the three people present were almost convinced in their hearts. Can I still ask the Consonance Pavilion a question with full authority? An old voice came from the statue. Jiang Xiu, your full authority has been used. Jiang Xiu's gaze swept over the three people and said, Everyone, you should believe me now. The three people's expressions were somewhat ugly, especially Ji Daozong. He had acted like a villain, but he didn't get anything out of it. It was truly embarrassing. Elder Q-Sword shook his head and said, Jiang Xiu, As far as he was concerned, Jiang Xiu had made a huge mistake. Jiang Xiu, do you have any other questions? The statue said, If you don't have any more questions, then extinguish the incense. No, Ji Daozong said. Wait, Jiang Xiu still has the authority to ask questions. Jiang Xiu was startled. He also felt that the statue's questions were very strange. Chapter 664. The gazes of the three landed on Jiang Xiu. Their eyes were filled with doubt. This was truly too suspicious. For immortal kings of their level, they wouldn't even be able to ask a single question in the Consonance Pavilion. Jiang Xiu, a mere disciple whose cultivation base was crippled, actually had 6 questions to ask? Jiang Xiu, who exactly are you? Ji Daozong asked. How do you have the right to ask so many questions? This time, even Ji Daozong was suspicious of his identity. Jiang Xiu said, Some were saved up before Qianqing school, and some were saved up after Qianqing school. There's nothing strange about this. I only went to Green Spirit Mountain, and I was able to save up a full set of questions. What's so strange about that? In his heart, he was asking all 180 generations of the Consonance Pavilion's ancestors. The other side was definitely doing this on purpose. Even if the Consonance Pavilion knew that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia, he could have chosen not to say anything. No one would have asked him how many questions Jiang Xiu had, but he took the initiative to ask. Didn't the Consonance Pavilion value words like gold? Jiang Xiu felt that this was done on purpose. Jiang Xiu hadn't actually broken it at Green Spirit Mountain. Instead, he had let Jin Yongshao fake his loss. In the end, everyone thought that there was a flaw in the Golden Sun unbreakable body. This had slapped the Consonance Pavilion's face and almost ruined their reputation. The Consonance Pavilion's ancestral teachings were not to interfere with anything in the world. They only collected information and answered questions. Thus, they couldn't come out to clarify things. However, people had emotions. They couldn't just let this go. This was definitely revenge. They were just short of shouting that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia. Jiang Xiu's eyes turned cold as he looked at the statue. The Consonance Pavilion would definitely seek him out for this debt. If Ji Daozong really wanted to ask, he really wouldn't be able to answer. There was a chance that his identity would be exposed. The Consonance Pavilion obviously knew what had happened to Jiang Luoxia, especially this Ji Daozong in front of him. If he knew that he really was Jiang Luoxia, then there was no need to say what the result would be. There was no way Jiang Xiu could survive. Really? Ji Daozong sized up Jiang Xiu with his gloomy eyes. Why don't you ask if there's a way to repair your natal artifact? Jiang Xiu said, There's no point in asking. My authority might not be at that level. Besides, everyone's situation is different. If it can be repaired, the conditions must be very strict. Even I can't do it. It's better not to waste the effort and slowly cultivate. Ji Daozong looked at Zhang Xiu. In his eyes, Zhang Xiu was indeed strange. However, Ji Daozong didn't take Zhang Xiu seriously. A heavenly deity with a broken natal divine artifact wasn't a threat to him. From the beginning to the end, he didn't put Zhang Xiu in his eyes. Zhang Xiu's intelligence was recognized by the Ji Daozong. Unfortunately, this was a world where cultivation was king. A person without strength and cultivation was worthless in the eyes of the Ji Daozong, no matter how high his intelligence was. Stupid. Ji Daozong believed that a truly smart person didn't have intelligence. Instead, they had to know how to manage themselves and make themselves better. They had to live a better life and win the respect and awe of more people. They shouldn't use a question with full authority to curry favor with a beautiful woman. Thinking of this, Ji Daozong's expression became very ugly. He really had the urge to slap Zhang Xiu to death. It was too damn wasteful. It was simply too outrageous. However, the two elders didn't say anything. In that case, let's go back. After saying this, Ji Daozong had no interest in staying. He was really disappointed today. That prodigal Zhang Xiu actually used a question with full authority to flirt with a girl. After Ji Daozong left, the two elders looked at Zhang Xiu. However, this wasn't the place to talk. We'll go back too. During Zhang Xiu's absence, there had actually been two major conflicts in Tianqing School. They were both about moving the school. Several people, led by Elder Q-Sword and Elder of Law Enforcement, strongly prevented the school from moving. Of course, Ji Daozong strongly insisted. The two sides quarreled fiercely several times. Zhang Xiu, Sect Master Ji is not here. Only Elder of Law Enforcement and I are here. If there's anything, let's talk frankly. Elder Q-Sword looked directly at Zhang Xiu and said, Tianqing School can't move. When he said this, the old elder couldn't control his emotions. Tianqing School had a foundation of more than 100,000 years. Many generations of people had been diligent here, leaving behind many histories and stories. As the saying went, it was difficult to leave one's hometown. Everyone wanted to return to their roots. Of course, Zhang Xiu didn't want Tianqing School to be so turbulent. Elder, aren't you being too serious by saying this to a disciple? Elder Q-Sword frowned and looked directly at Zhang Xiu. Why do you have so many questions about Tianqing School to ask? There are a total of 6 questions. It's difficult for others to ask even one. You still don't admit that you're Sect Master Zhang? Zhang Xiu shook his head helplessly. If I were Zhang Luoxia, I wouldn't have been almost killed by Sect Master Ji just now. Oh, speaking of this, I'd like to thank Elder Q-Sword for saving my life just now. Zhang Xiu's attitude was very sincere. Elder Q-Sword of Changkang was a little confused. Sometimes, he also wondered if his judgment was wrong because Zhang Xiu refused to admit it. For example, just now, if Zhang Xiu was really Zhang Luoxia, there was no reason for him to provoke Ji Daozong. He could have said frankly that if he had already asked the questions, there wouldn't have been such a big conflict. Putting himself in danger like this was too much of a fight for loyalty. Only young people could do this. Regarding this point, Elder of Law Enforcement was also very confused. Elders, if you still don't believe me, you can really test Sect Master Zhang's blood. Elder Q-Sword really didn't give up. That's exactly what I was thinking. However, a while ago, Elder Wushang Sparrow said that a very important enchanted moon white lotus was lost in the Hall of Immortal Medicine. It can be refined into a kind of powder to break the array of the Sect Master's ancestral hole. He was worried that someone had replaced Sect Master Zhang's blood. As he spoke, he stared at Zhang Xiu, as if to say that he was the thief. Therefore, we spent some time looking for the part where Sect Master Zhang needed to drip his blood. We really found it. Whoosh! Zhang Xiu's face suddenly changed. He had been in Tianqing School for so many years, and there were many places where blood was needed. Especially when he was young, when he was injured, he even bled with others. If the other party really wanted to look for it, it was really possible to find it. What's wrong? You have nothing to say now? Zhang Xiu said with a smile. Elder, you insist on having a blood test. Although I don't think it's necessary, I can only cooperate. Everything will be decided by you, Elder. All right, then we'll have a blood test. After saying that, Elder Q Sword ordered a disciple. Not long after, the disciple returned and said, Elder Wushang Sparrow said to wait for a while. Peak Master Su's injuries are very serious, and he's recuperating. Taking advantage of this time, Elder Q Sword and Elder of Law Enforcement asked him about some things that had happened in Qingling Mountain. Zhang Xiu also reported it as such. About 2 hours later, when the sky was already dark, Elder Wushang Sparrow leisurely arrived. I've made the two elders wait for a long time. Elder Q Sword gestured for the only disciple who had listened to him to leave. There were only 4 people left in the huge palace. Zhang Xiu, Elder Q Sword, Elder of Law Enforcement, and Wushang Sparrow. Wushang Sparrow took out a piece of gauze that was covered in blood. The blood had all dried up, and it was unknown how many years it had been. However, Zhang Xiu still remembered this piece of gauze. This was the first time he had gone to Wushang Sparrow for a serious injury. At that time, Wushang Sparrow had said that he had high hopes for him and that he would have great achievements in the future. He had especially left this gauze as a memento because there was a line of words written on it. It could be exchanged for a life. At that time, Zhang Xiu felt that Wushang Sparrow had helped him treat his injuries. He promised that if Wushang Sparrow was in danger in the future, he would bring this gauze to him and he would definitely agree. After so many years, it was just like when he said goodbye to Liuli. Before he left, he gave Wushang Sparrow the words, "If you can't solve anything, come find me at Chenqing School." Zhang Xiu had done this kind of thing too many times, so how could he remember it? In fact, Wushang Sparrow had almost forgotten about it. The blood has completely dried up. It needs to be steamed and collected with magic. Let's do it in front of everyone so that everyone can see more clearly. Wushang Sparrow hung the gauze above the boiling water and used a thin film to collect the steam. There would be an extremely small amount of blood inside, but as long as there was blood, it would be enough. Zhang Xiu remained silent. At this moment, he could no longer pretend. After the blood test, his identity as Zhang Luoxia would be confirmed. In front of this kind of evidence, even if he had 10,000 mouths, it would be useless. There was no way to argue. What? You're willing to admit it? Chapter 665. Therefore, no matter how smart a person was, there would always be a blind spot in their thinking. Zhang Xiu was struggling at this moment. This was his most embarrassing moment. The feeling of being exposed was really bad, especially in such a passive situation where the consequences were unknown. There was a question that had been buried in Zhang Xiu's heart. Where were his people? His subordinates, his disciples, none of them were left. If the Ji Dao sect really inherited the position of sect master because of his death, then it would be fair and square. But why did his subordinates, disciples, and maids all disappear? They were all killed. After the death of Zhang Luoxia, those people had no master and were looking for a peer to rely on. Why would the sect make them disappear? Although the people of the previous emperor would no longer be in an important position, as long as there was a normal transfer of imperial power, it would not make them disappear without a trace. Why was this? Those people were the talented elders that Zhang Xiu thought highly of. Even if they could not become elders, they were more than qualified to be deacons in the sect. Why did the sect have to lower its status and recruit talents everywhere? This made Zhang Xiu feel a sense of danger. The matter was not as simple as it seemed. The 3 people in front of him seemed to be loyal, especially Elder Qian Jian and Elder Zfa. How could they let such an innocent and powerful core disciple disappear? It was difficult to distinguish between loyalty and treachery. Zhang Xiu did not dare to reveal his identity. But now, Zhang Xiu didn't have a good feeling. Supreme Sparrow came forward and said that he had offended Zhang Xiu. He gestured for Zhang Xiu to extend his hand so that he could collect the blood. Zhang Xiu didn't have a reason to refuse, so he just let it be. At this moment, Zhang Xiu could only resign himself to fate. The Supreme Sparrow easily collected Zhang Xiu's blood. The two elders on the side were paying attention to the Supreme Sparrow's every move. It was time for the blood test. Zhang Xiu noticed from the corner of his eyes that the two elders were looking at him. There was a hint of mockery in their eyes, as if they had already confirmed that Zhang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia. Blood sacrifice. After the two types of blood fused together, the Supreme Sparrow used a blood sacrifice spell. This was a very common blood test spell. The sacrifice could only be made from one person's blood. If there were impurities, then it wouldn't work. If it was one person's blood, then it would burst out with a strong blood light. If it wasn't one person's blood, then it wouldn't have any effect. Everyone was stunned, including Zhang Xiu himself. What happened? The Supreme Vermilion Bird cast the spell again, but the result was the same. There was no reaction at all. Blood is mixed. Zhang Xiu's heart was thumping wildly. He was ecstatic. This was too unexpected. Had his blood changed from before? It was because the awakening of the bloodline had caused the difference between the blood and the previous blood. Therefore, the ceremony had failed and the blood test had failed. No, that's impossible. It doesn't make sense. Ask Sword Elder, Enforcement Elder, and Supreme Sparrow Elder were dumbfounded. They were very sure that Zhang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia. At this moment, time seemed to stop. Everything became inconceivable. Everything had gone beyond the three's calculations. A battle they were sure to win had been lost inexplicably. The three looked at Zhang Xiu, who was slowly calming down from his nervous state, and then looked at the blood. How could this be? It seemed that they couldn't accept the fact in front of them. Zhang Xiu was also puzzled. After a normal immortal changed into a divine cultivator, he was still the same person. There was no reason for the blood to be different and not be his. But no matter how strange it was, this result was greatly beneficial to Zhang Xiu. He had once again escaped a disaster. 3 elders, now you should believe that I'm not sect leader Zhang. The truth was in front of them. They had to believe it even if they didn't want to. You're really not Zhang Luoxia? Ask Sword Elder seemed to be unable to accept it at all. I'm really not sect leader Zhang. Zhang Xiu shook his head solemnly. The hall fell silent. After a moment, Zhang Xiu said, "If there's nothing else, can this disciple leave now?" "You may leave." The one who spoke was Ask Sword Elder. His tone had changed. In the past, it was more or less polite, but now it was very calm and even somewhat indifferent. This time it was true. It was true that Zhang Xiu was not Zhang Luoxia. Supreme Elder, are you sure there's no mistake? Supreme Sparrow Elder was also dumbfounded. That's impossible. The 2 elders also saw the entire process. There's only one possibility for this to happen. Zhang Xiu is not Zhang Luoxia. Elder of Law Enforcement said, I thought it was impossible. A person's appearance can be changed, but their cultivation can't be changed. If he changed from an immortal to a divine cultivator, even if he was harmed in the past and wanted to come back for revenge, it's impossible for him to ignore his cultivation. Without his cultivation, how can he take revenge? Tianqing School was very quiet. Other than the wind in the mountain range, there were only the occasional sounds of birds chirping. After Zhang Xiu returned to his courtyard, Wang Xinya made him some spiritual tea. She took over Zhao Rong's job. Young master. Zhang Xiu looked at her, who seemed to want to say something but stopped. If you have something to say, say it. Wang Xinya said, Sister Zhao Rong has left. Young master, shouldn't you find someone to replace her? Replace her? Zhang Xiu shook his head. He didn't need it. He just needed some tea to drink. You can leave. After Wang Xinya left, Zhang Xiu habitually picked up the Tianwan talisman and looked at it. He was thinking about it in his mind. In the main hall, when he wanted to kill Zhang Xiu, the power of the spell made him feel unfamiliar. The Ji Daozong was his main opponent during his growth. It could be said that he was quite familiar with him. However, at that moment, Zhang Xiu felt very unfamiliar. The Ji Daozong gave him a very strange feeling. From his point of view, it really didn't make sense. Why did the Ji Daozong insist on moving after losing the Taihua sect? Ling Su was invited by the Taihua sect. Moreover, was changing a place really better than the current Tianqing mountain range? Could it be that luck would help him become an immortal emperor? Unless this person was crazy. Could it be that he was really crazy? This would only force the relationship between him and the elders to become more and more strained. It would only lead the Tianqing school to destruction. Instead, Zhang Xiu frowned. He suspected that there was something he didn't know. But at the moment, Zhang Xiu didn't have any way to verify it. He concentrated on looking at the Tianwan talisman. When night fell, after confirming that there would be no visitors, Zhang Xiu began to sit cross-legged and cultivate. On the way back, Zhang Xiu didn't cultivate in order to avoid being noticed. He just let himself absorb the essence and blood. The speed was very slow and almost negligible. Now, of course, he had to seize the time to use the Great Spirit Sealing Art to absorb the essence and blood. As soon as he entered the state of cultivation, his body faintly emitted a soft blood light. His luck instantly reached a very high level, and his blood was boiling. Some blood factors in his body were not separated, but awakened out of thin air. A vague feeling before became stronger. At this moment, he gave others a feeling of boundless desolation. This might be the early sign of the second form evolution. It should be the aura of antiquity times. However, Zhang Xiu himself didn't feel that it was emitted from his body. His natal divine weapon was also crazily absorbing blood. The natal divine weapon and Zhang Xiu were one, which was the foundation of his life. When Zhang Xiu grew stronger, his natal divine weapon would also grow stronger. When his natal divine weapon grew stronger, Zhang Xiu would also grow stronger. The two depended on each other and were inseparable. Among the cultivators, very few people would refine their natal divine weapons. Unless there was some special opportunity that could make their future development faster and easier than others, they wouldn't refine their natal divine weapons. Of course, some sword cultivators would refine their natal divine swords. This way, their cultivation would be faster and their fighting power would be greater. However, it would naturally require more resources. Zhang Xiu's original choice to refine his natal divine weapon was actually out of helplessness. Under the circumstances that the Earth's environment couldn't allow him to cultivate, he chose to refine his natal divine weapon. There was no unified opinion on whether to refine a natal divine weapon or not. No one said that it was bad to refine a natal divine weapon. Some said that it was good to refine a natal divine weapon because it was more powerful and faster to cultivate. At this juncture, the more subtle blood factors in Zhang Xiu's body were awakened crazily. There was a strong feeling that a certain world was opening in his body. Like a dam that had been opened, the blood factors rushed out crazily, giving Zhang Xiu a different way of thinking. The heavenly questioning talisman that had disappeared on his natal divine weapon suddenly lit up. Divine rune. His body was hot, and runes appeared. It was the heavenly questioning talisman. Chapter 666. The essence blood that Zhao Rong collected was the blood of God Buzhou's descendant. Although it did not reach the level of God Buzhou's essence blood, the appearance of the Heaven's Inquisition Talisman Amulet's godly runes was definitely good news. The appearance of the Heaven's Inquisition Talisman Amulet meant that the essence blood was very pure and very close to God Buzhou's. This made Zhang Xiu very happy. The godly runes gave Zhang Xiu a powerful force. Although it was only one that had yet to form, it was a very exciting beginning. As his godly body continued to evolve, he believed that when he completed the first Heaven's Inquisition diagram, he would evolve to the second form and become a godly emperor. According to his previous growth, he should have broken away from the infant form of his own bloodline and entered the rapid growth stage of puberty, moving towards the third form of maturity. Although he did not dare to say that he would be like God Bujo, who was covered in Heaven's Inquisition talisman amulet, he would definitely reach a height that Jiang Xiu did not dare to imagine before. Thinking about this, Jiang Xiu was even more motivated. The minute bloodline genes in Jiang Xiu's bloodline were constantly awakening. His godly body was also undergoing a strong transformation. Popping sounds could be heard, even the sound of bones cracking could be heard. The transformation of the body was very big. Gods and immortals had a very big difference. Immortals would constantly strengthen their original body as their cultivation level increased, while gods would change the basic structure of their body. Could it be that his appearance would change again? His current cultivation was already crippled. If there was a change, it would be suspicious. He felt that his body was expanding. His body was becoming bigger. The Heaven's Inquisition talisman amulet's influence began to show. The Heaven's Inquisition talisman amulet was an ancient talisman. Whether it was immortals or gods, especially gods, they all had one thing in common, and that was their size. According to legend, God Bujo's body spanned across the entire world, reaching the sky and stepping on the ground. No, that won't do. Jiang Xiu was startled. While he was hesitating, the huge force left his body. Perhaps it was because Jiang Xiu's body was being squeezed, or perhaps it was natural. After the huge force surged out of his body, it formed a virtual shadow behind Jiang Xiu that was identical to Jiang Xiu but 3 or 4 times larger than Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu could actually control him at will. It was like his own shadow. No matter how he moved, the huge shadow would move. His hair fluttered in the wind, and the huge shadow also fluttered in the wind. However, it didn't seem to have any restraints. It seemed to have transcended the restraints of this world's power. It also seemed to have obtained an ancient power and was much stronger than Jiang Xiu. It didn't form any offensive power on its own. It just supported Jiang Xiu. There were many such secrets circulating in the immortal martial continent, but they were all bloodline powers. It seemed like this was the power of his bloodline that had finally awakened. Now, Jiang Xiu could unleash the awakening of his bloodline without any worries. He didn't need to worry about his body becoming too big and revealing his true identity. If anything, it was this virtual shadow or his second primordial spirit that was huge. As Jiang Xiu madly absorbed the essence blood, the second primordial spirit behind him grew bigger at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was like a balloon being blown up. As the virtual shadow grew bigger, Jiang Xiu's strength also increased crazily. The virtual shadow grew bigger and bigger, almost reaching the height of a 5-meter-tall building. Jiang Xiu's heart pounded. He was really worried that the virtual shadow would make a hole in the roof. At that time, there would be a series of crackling sounds. That would be terrible. But unexpectedly, the virtual shadow was still a virtual shadow. It actually pierced through the roof like a real shadow. After that, it continued to grow. In the next moment, it had already grown to more than 10 meters. 50 meters. 100 meters. 150 meters. Under the moonlight, a dark shadow in the shape of a human body appeared on Shenxiu Peak. It continued to expand, as if some almighty person was using magic to make himself bigger. He spun and expanded like a balloon. He was like an ancient demon dancing in the mountains. It was extremely terrifying. 200 meters, 300 meters. Finally, it stopped when it was the size of a small mountain. Hoo! The huge change in his body and the crazily surging strength made Jiang Xiu feel as if he was being torn apart. Now that it stopped, he really felt a sense of release. What was even more amazing was that when he opened his eyes, the virtual shadow also opened its eyes. Jiang Xiu could see everything in the surroundings through it. Moreover, he could see more clearly than before. The colors were more vibrant, and he could see more minute substances. He could even see the dust in the air clearly. There was a disadvantage to this. The Skyline mountain range, which was a place with such dense spiritual energy, was actually gray under the night sky. It wasn't beautiful at all. Jiang Xiu saw the lights in the distance. At this time, there was actually someone who hadn't slept. It was in the direction of the main peak. His heart skipped a beat. It was Ji Daozong. He actually hadn't slept yet. To be honest, at this moment, he really didn't dare to spy on him. Ji Daozong was a dignified celestial king. Even if Zhang Xiu had mastered a mysterious innate skill, there was still a difference in realm. It was easy for the other party to detect him. He saw Ji Daozong sneaking into the bathing pool alone. There was no one around to serve him. Zhang Xiu wasn't interested in peeping. Moreover, there was nothing to look at for a grown man. At most, he would take a look at his private part and express deep disdain. However, just as Zhang Xiu was about to retract his gaze, he frowned, and a thoughtful expression appeared in his eyes. There were many sword scars on Ji Daozong's body, but the long sword scar on his left shoulder was gone. That was the spoil of war that Zhang Xiu had left on him when the two of them were fighting in the sect. Why is it gone? Some scars could be healed, while some would remain. Zhang Xiu's sword scar was deliberately left by him. He wanted Ji Daozong to remember the scar for the rest of his life. Ordinary medicinal stones couldn't get rid of it, but now it was gone. Strange. Of course, he didn't remember the shape of the scars on Ji Daozong's body, but he definitely remembered this sword strike. It was also this sword strike that allowed him to establish his position as the #1 person among the new generation of Qianqing school in one fell swoop. He still remembered Ji Daozong's dumbfounded expression at that time, and he still remembered the cheers of his master and brothers. There was no reason for this. If he felt that the scars were ugly, he should have taken a certain kind of spiritual medicine or rubbed it against a certain kind of spiritual medicine to remove all the scars. However, he couldn't remove Zhang Xiu's sword scar even if he wanted to. This was much more difficult than removing all the scars. There were many overlapping sword scars on it. The more Zhang Xiu looked at Ji Daozong, the more unfamiliar he felt. A terrifying thought appeared in his mind. Could it be that the person in front of him wasn't Ji Daozong? Logically speaking, he had been spying on him for so long. If he was really Ji Daozong, he should have discovered him long ago. When Zhang Xiu went to the main hall to see him, he heard some disciples say that Ji Daozong's personality had changed greatly. Everyone thought that it was because Madame Jiang had passed away and Ji Daozong had fallen out with Taihua sect. Now, there was another possibility. Was it because his personality had changed greatly, or was the person in front of him not Ji Daozong at all? After he finished bathing, he turned back to his bedroom to sleep. When Zhang Xiu wanted to follow him into the bedroom, his gaze was blocked by a light film. There was actually an array set up inside to prevent people from using eye techniques. There was no place to bathe, but there was an array set up inside. What was so shameful about it? This made Zhang Xiu think that there was some secret hidden inside. Unfortunately, his eye techniques couldn't see inside. If he forced himself, he was afraid that he would be discovered. In the end, he could only give up. The next morning, the sun rose not long after. Shan Kuan, the eldest disciple of Ji Daozong, came to the main peak early in the morning to start working. Song country, have you offered the resources? The disciple next to him said, Not yet. Shen Kuan's face was cold. He drew a line on the scroll and spat out a word, Destroy. Yes. Shen Kuan turned to the next page and asked, What about by D country? Not yet. He drew a line again and spat out a word, Destroy. Zhang Xiu's expression changed when he heard this. The matter of exterminating an entire nation had to be decided by the sect master. Shen Kuan was merely a true disciple, yet he dared to speak so arrogantly. Was the Heaven Motion sect the sect master of the Ji Dao sect, or was Shen Kuan the sect master? The two countries mentioned above weren't small countries. Furthermore, the ancestors of these two countries were all meritorious subjects of the Heaven Motion sect. In the past, the resources provided to these two countries were much less than the other countries in order to commend the contributions of their ancestors. Was he going to destroy them just like that? Shen Kuan didn't even blink. Chapter 667. The sun shone on Zhang Xiu's jade-like skin, and his slightly invisible pores glowed faintly. His tall and straight figure stood upright, and he felt a surge of power all over his body. It was indescribably carefree, and his divine body had obviously reached a new level. The drop of essence blood that Zhao Rong had prepared was indeed extraordinary. It should have been refined using the methods of the goddess. Not only had his divine body been greatly improved, but his great god sealing technique had also made extraordinary progress. His natal divine artifact was faintly showing signs of transforming. From the beginning of cultivating the grand god sealing technique, Zhang Xiu felt that this technique was limitless. It was true that he was ranked 9th among the 3,000 great ways. Therefore, he had been walking down the path resolutely, hoping that the grand god sealing technique could bring him back to the peak. Now, it seemed that the divine king was definitely not his limit. It was not impossible for him to cultivate to become a divine emperor. With a powerful bloodline and the most powerful grand god sealing technique, Zhang Xiu was full of confidence in his cultivation prospects. Even the techniques passed down in the Chenqing school had already become insignificant to him. The difference between them was obvious. The grand god sealing technique was on par with the great golden elixir technique. All the immortal cultivation techniques today originated from the great golden elixir technique. After so many years, how many techniques had been lost and how many were left? How could they be compared with the grand god sealing technique? Even the Chenqing school's secret technique, the heavenly mirror, which could allow one to become a celestial emperor, was not as good as the grand god sealing technique. Although the grand god sealing technique had improved overall, there was no substantial breakthrough during this period of time. After integrating the law of heavenly wind, the heavenly fire was not complete, and he still lacked the earth and water. Only by integrating these two, together with time and world, could the divine steel be revealed. All was silent. Zhang Xiu took advantage of this opportunity to pry open the heavenly fire laws and comprehend them. Wanting to take a perfect step in any law was extremely difficult. It would be blocked by the true power of heaven's secrets. This sort of heavenly concealment power was stubbornly covering everything. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't lift it. Although his divine body was heaven-defying, his comprehension of the law of heavenly earth and heavenly earth was still the same as before. Although it was faster, after all, there was no way for him to constantly comprehend it. There was no progress for a long time. It was like playing a game, he could not pass the level again. Not long after, Chenqing school suddenly became noisy. Something seemed to have happened in the direction of the main peak. Several elders had rushed over. In the past, it was the Ji Dao sect that praised Zhang Xiu as Zhang Luoxia. Later, several elders said that he was Zhang Luoxia. In short, he was always in the whirlpool of things. But now, no one recognized him as Zhang Luoxia. In addition, his cultivation was crippled. He was even inferior to ordinary true disciples. How could they let him participate in politics? But Zhang Xiu didn't need to go there to know the reason. Shan Kuan had ordered the extermination of 2 loyal kingdoms, and this would inevitably cause a huge uproar in the sect. Some of the royal families of these 2 kingdoms were disciples of the sect, and if there was a disciple, there would be a master. How could it be so easy to deal with them? Young master. Wang Xinya came over with the spirit tea. Although her craftsmanship was not as good as Zhao Rong's, it was still pretty good. The outside world is abuzz. It said that Head Shen ordered the extermination of 2 kingdoms. Corpses are everywhere. One of the royal family's disciples wrote a letter in blood, threatening the sect to give them justice. Zhang Xiu took the tea and took a sip. Shan Kuan is too arrogant. The elders are not decorations. Wang Xinya said, the elders indeed want to severely punish Shen Kuan, but Shen Kuan doesn't care at all. And Wang Xinya said, without the sect master's decree, as the head disciple of the sect master, the elders have no right to punish him. Zhang Xiu was puzzled. What about sect master Ji? Wang Xinya said, I can't see him. Now that sect master Ji basically doesn't show his face, it's very difficult for the elders to see him. They can only see Head Shen. Now, Everyone is saying that head Shen is a traitor who is ruining the sect. Hearing this, Shan Kuan really did sound like a treacherous official who was causing chaos in the imperial court. Zhang Xiu said, "Doesn't sect master Ji care?" Wang Xinya came back earlier than Zhang Xiu. Moreover, she was in contact with the surrounding neighbors. Xiaoye was also a gossiper, so she was quite clear about the news. Doesn't care. Everything is decided by head Shen. Even if sect master Ji sits on the supreme seat, he doesn't say anything. Everything is decided by head Shen. Sect master listens to his every word. Zhang Xiu frowned. This was too abnormal. The extermination of these two kingdoms was no small matter. Even if the Qianqing school wanted to move, they still needed people. It was impossible for them to be alone and starve after moving. Therefore, some of the subordinate kingdoms that had deep connections with the Qianqing school also had to move along. These two kingdoms were among them. Not to mention Shan Kuan's inhumane atrocities, exterminating those two kingdoms was like killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. The Ji Daoist sect had no reason to let him run amok. Zhang Xiu asked, "Sect Master Ji seems to be acting very strangely." Wang Xinya looked around and lowered her voice. She carefully said, "Young master, Xiaoye heard people outside say that the current sect master might not be the real sect master. He might be a fake, a puppet." Zhang Xiu stared at Wang Xinya with wide eyes. Rumors might not be true. The Ji Daoist sect didn't care about anything and listened to everything Shan Kuan said. It was inevitable that there would be rumors about him being a puppet. A fake Ji Daoist sect. Others might just say it to vent their anger. However, the speaker didn't mean it, but the listener paid attention. Zhang Xiu thought of last night. He accidentally saw that the Ji Daoist sect didn't have the sword mark he left behind. His eyes became even more pensive. What exactly happened? When the Ji Daoist sect's Madame Zhang Xiu was besieged, Zhang Xiu was certain that the person who rushed over was from the Ji Daoist sect. At that time, the cultivation techniques used by the Ji Daoist sect were all spells that the Ji Daoist sect relied on to survive. Later, the person who fought with the Taihua sect's sect master, Jiang Shituo, was also undoubtedly from the Ji Daoist sect. If there were any changes, it should have happened after that. In the direction of the main peak, a few elders came out of the main hall. From afar, one could feel the anger of these elders. It seemed that they had returned in defeat. If they couldn't even see the face of the Ji Dao sect, how could they impeach head Shen? This made Zhang Xiu frown slightly. It's like this again. It's like this every time. Wang Xinya said, "There are often people who complain, but they can only return in failure every time. Everyone says that the current Qianqing school's Shan Kuan is covering the sky with one hand." The current Qianqing school was facing internal and external troubles. They even had to move the sect. It could be said that they were in a precarious situation. Zhang Xiu said, "Have you heard about the situation with the new sect?" Wang Xinya said, "I've heard a bit. Although the project is very large, the number of people involved is also astronomical. It's said that the progress is very fast. Perhaps it won't be long before the sect can be moved." The construction of the immortal martial continent relied on magic power. The efficiency was much faster than the technology of Earth. It's said that it won't be long before the people from the Three Peaks can move over. Zhang Xiu thought that the Ji Daoist sect probably wanted to transfer the political power over first. As long as the people in power moved over, the people below them would have no choice but to follow. Indeed, if they controlled the people from the Three Peaks, it would be difficult for the people below to play any tricks. The progress of the new sect was indeed very fast. On the third day after the incident, the Ji Daoist sect heard that it was almost done. They finally appeared and announced that they were going to move to the new sect. However, they were met with strong opposition from several elders. Ever since they had a falling out with the Taihua sect, the Ji Daoist sect hadn't left the sect. The Taihua sect definitely wouldn't leave the matter at that. Moreover, the Ji Daoist sect still had the Taihua sect's most precious treasure in their hands. They couldn't just ignore this matter. However, the Daoist sect was stubborn and Shan Kuan fanned the flames from the side. In the end, they couldn't stop him. There was already an elder in charge of the new sect, and the Daozong might not come back this time. For his safety, in order to avoid being ambushed by the people of the Tai Hua sect, the elders could only go with him. Since things had developed to this point, they might as well send another group of disciples over. It could be considered the first batch of disciples to move. The highest authority of the sect had been transferred to the new sect. In theory, the Qianqing school could also be said to be moving the sect. For such a big matter, the Daoist sect didn't choose a date or make any preparations. He was very capricious, like a traveler going on a trip. At noon, the sect started to prepare for the first batch of people to move. The thousands of flying boats of the sect appeared in the sky between the peaks of the Qianqing mountain range. It was a spectacular sight. Zhang Xiu frowned and was puzzled. Shan Kuan actually remembered him and asked him to listen to him. Chapter 668. Although the elders of the Dao sect had left, Shan Kuan was still in the sect. He actually remembered Zhang Xiu and summoned Zhang Xiu to the main hall. For the first time, Zhang Xiu looked at the person he had once disdained. "Chief Shen summoned me?" Shan Kuan sat behind the long table, his head lowered as he read something. Without raising his head, he used a red brush to circle the word, destroy, and threw it on the ground in front of Zhang Xiu. "Luhan State, destroy. I don't want to see a member of the royal family alive." Zhang Xiu was stunned. Luhan State was the family of his deceased senior brother, Lu Yudao. It was a dynasty that was inextricably linked to the Qianqing school. "Chief Shen, I'm still injured. I'm afraid I'm powerless." Shen Kuan raised his head and looked at Zhang Xiu. He slapped his forehead and said, "I've been so busy that I forgot about this. How about this? You go and pick a few true disciples to accompany you. Although your cultivation is no longer there, your intelligence is still outstanding. This time, you have to be straightforward and do not disappoint me." Zhang Xiu picked up the sect leader's decree on the ground and said, "Yes." After leaving the palace, he looked back inside. His eyes were incomparably cold and terrifying. A small disciple harmed the loyal people of the Qianqing school? Afterward, he went to the sword-seeking peak. With the sect leader's decree in hand, it was very convenient to recruit disciples. He happened to meet Qin Qing. After asking, he found out that she was originally going to be transferred to the new sect. However, she didn't want to go for the time being, so she excused herself on a mission. Therefore, she was at the sword-seeking peak at the moment. "Junior brother Zhang, what's the matter?" She had a good impression of Zhang Xiu and was very willing to interact with Zhang Xiu. Zhang Xiu said, "Chief Shen ordered me to carry out a mission. Senior sister Qin, help me find a few more people." Qin Qing secretly regretted it. If she had known earlier, she would not have picked up Zhang Xiu's matter. What good could have happened to Shan Kuan? Shan Kuan had already caused everyone's resentment to boil. Everyone could not wait to avoid him. "What mission?" Zhang Xiu said, "He helped me find someone. Let's talk on the way." Qin Qing had no choice but to help Zhang Xiu call 3 more people. One day later, on the flying boat, Qin Qing asked, "Junior martial brother Zhang, can you tell me now? What is our mission?" Zhang Xiu said coldly, "Order dynasty to move." Everyone's faces changed when they heard that. They vaguely felt that this might be the case, because many similar things had happened in the sect in succession. They were extremely unwilling, but the disciples of Qianqing school didn't dare to disobey the sect's orders. Which dynasty? When Qin Qing asked this question, she more or less felt somewhat sorrowful. If the imperial court did not submit, the imperial court would be destroyed. They wanted to be bloody executioners. Zhang Xiu said, "The Western Tang dynasty." "What?" Qin Qing and the others all screamed and looked at Zhang Xiu in disbelief. Qin Qing said, "Junior martial brother Zhang, you must be joking." Zhang Xiu's face was indifferent. Do you think I'm joking? Originally, the Western Tang Empire was not a great empire. However, the Shen clan of the Western Tang Empire produced a great figure who shocked the entire Qing prefecture. That was Shen Kuan. Thus, the Western Tang Empire naturally rose in status. It continued to expand over the years. In just a dozen years, it became a great empire. But would Shen Kuan make things difficult for his own family and kill his own people? He must be out of his mind. No wonder Qin Qing and the others lost their composure. A disciple named Zhao Quan said, "Junior Marshal Brother Jiang, are you kidding? Western Tang is Chief Shen's family. Would he order his own dynasty to move and kill his own family?" They absolutely didn't believe it. Jiang Xiu took out the sect leader's decree and handed it over. He looked forward from beginning to end, as if there was nothing strange about this matter. Qin Qing and the others hurriedly took it and read it. It was clearly written on it. It was indeed the Western Tang dynasty. Of course, this sect leader's decree was not real. There was the sect leader's unique mark on it. It was too difficult for others to forge this thing, but for the former sect leader Jiang Xiu, it was too easy. It's real. Qin Qing was puzzled. Why would Chief Shen do this? Jiang Xiu shook his head and said nothing. Since Shen Kuan wanted to play, then he would play with him. Since he liked to destroy dynasties so much, Jiang Xiu would let him have a taste of his family and dynasty being destroyed. The group of people accompanying them looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Qin Qing said, "Since it's the sect leader's decree, it shouldn't be fake. Chief Shen has been under a lot of pressure these days. I'm afraid he will." She didn't continue. Everyone present understood what she was going to say next. She was going to abandon her dynasty to protect herself. Although Shen Kuan seemed to have a lot of power, it shouldn't be forgotten that this was Tianqing school. In addition to the sect leader, there were so many elders. The flying boat gradually quieted down. Everyone realized that this trip might be more troublesome than they had imagined. Qin Qing smiled bitterly. "Junior brother Jiang, you really found me a good job." She didn't hide her resentment. However, she was very tolerant of Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu had helped her before. The two of them had formed a good friendship on the trip to Qingling Mountain. Especially that shocking sword move, it made her a little famous now. She was highly praised by everyone in the sect. The rest of the people were a little worried. There was more trouble for no reason. Western Tang was to the west of Tianqing School, and it was quite far away. It could be regarded as the border where Tianqing School's strength could reach, but it was quite prosperous. On the third day, the flying boat stopped at Western Tang and drove directly above the imperial palace. Of course, the Western Tang royal family recognized the flying boat of Tianqing School at a glance. Their ancestor was the chief of Tianqing School. In this country, the royal family was arrogant. They were not very respectful when they saw the disciples of Tianqing School. They had someone above them. The disciples of Tianqing School are here on business. Why don't the Western Tang royal family come to receive them quickly? Hearing this, the Western Tang emperor slowly walked out from the inner court of the imperial palace. Surrounded by a group of palace servants, the Western Tang emperor's body was bloated and he wore a yellow robe. There was a smile on his face, but his arrogant appearance made people feel disgusted. "Exalted immortals, you've come a long way. I've already ordered people to prepare wine and dishes." Jiang Xiu and the others got off the flying boat. "Exalted immortals, is my ancestor doing well in the sect?" When he asked this, his neck was half raised. His arrogant look was just short of shouting that Shen Kuan was his ancestor. "Ah, I heard that the ancestor is very busy in the sect and doesn't even have time to rest. It's not easy to be the chief disciple. We haven't seen the ancestor for many years. We miss him very much." As he said this, his eyes turned red. This Western Tang emperor was actually a drama queen. But maybe he was really sentimental and felt that he had not been filial to Shen Kuan. Jiang Xiu said, "He's fine." In addition, Qin Qing and the others were also silent. Shan Kuan had lost the hearts of the people in the sect. They also had a lot of opinions about Shan Kuan. It could even be said that they saw him as a treacherous official. When they thought about how hateful he was, the roots of their teeth itched with hatred. How could they be nice to Shan Kuan's descendants? Seeing that the group of exalted immortals was so cold and didn't know how to build a relationship with him, the son of the chief disciple, the Western Tang Emperor put away his longing expression and said uninterestedly, "Please come in." The speed at which his face changed was really fast. He really was a drama queen. The banquet was quite sumptuous. In addition to the Western Tang Emperor, there were also the Empress and several princes and princesses. There were also several important ministers. The standard of drinking companions could be considered top-notch. The Western Tang Emperor opened his mouth and asked, "I don't know if you exalted immortals are passing by my Western Tang or if you've come here specially." Zhang Xiu said, "We've been ordered to come here." "Specially come to my Western Tang?" The Western Tang Emperor was a bit surprised. "Then what's the matter?" Zhang Xiu said coldly, "We've been ordered by the sect master to move the Western Tang dynasty to the new location of the Qianqing school. As for where to move, the sect will make specific arrangements when the time comes." As soon as these words came out, the entire banquet was in an uproar. "What do you mean we have to move the capital? How can we do that? Our industries are all here." The Western Tang Emperor's expression changed greatly. There were so many people in the country. If they moved, not to mention how many people would be lost, the entire dynasty would be ruined. It would take hundreds of years for them to recover. They might even be unable to recover from this setback. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.